Okay, good evening, everyone. Karen Carabani, Chair. We're gonna get started tonight. As you guys know, we have the Transportation and Land Use meeting. We have experts here from the Office of Transportation, Department of Public Works, Maryland Department of Transportation, the Maryland Aviation Administration to help us. Per usual, if we can just keep our conversations and questions and comments to the appropriate time. And when you do speak, state your name for the record and for our friends online who are watching. The bathrooms are out the door to the left, should you need to excuse yourself, and all public comment is reserved for the end. So if you could just wait for that moment to come. So if I could get a motion to approve today's agenda.
Motion to approve.
A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I'd like to get a motion also to approve the meeting minutes from the notes from last meeting. Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, then, all right, thank you.
Okay, so great. Thanks for everyone attending, especially members of the public. So tonight we're going to be talking about transportation issues. We've got experts from the county. We've got experts from the Office of Transportation from the county. Department of Public Works, hopefully here shortly, as well as then state representatives from the Department of Transportation and the Maryland Aviation Administration. So we're going to discuss the region here, and we're going to try to break it up into 3 or 4 areas. Try to chunk it down a little bit so that we can have some more focused discussions. We'll first talk about some of the concerns that we've heard about, some of the studies and projects that are currently underway or planned. We'll open it up for discussion for the SAC to talk about what some of the concerns you all may have, as well as any potential solutions, any recommendations that you have. And then we'll circle back at the end and sort of, again, try to distill some of this into some of the strategies that we're starting to see when we share those out with the public for public review in a few weeks or in a couple months. Okay. So, again, always just want to start with where we've been and where we're going. So for the next slide then. Right, as we started off with environmental history, and we've sort of been tackling some of these topics, and hopefully you've been starting to see some of the interconnectedness of these topics and some of the challenges that we see, but also maybe some opportunity. So we're going to review these transportation and land use here with our experts tonight. Again, talk about those issues and solutions. And then, like I said, move on to land use and zoning, and then at our March meeting, and then actually roll out some maps for numbers 6 and 7, where we can actually then talk about where we may want to make any zoning changes based on a lot of things that we've talked about here, whether we need to upzone certain areas, but again, maybe what are the consequences with transportation, or like I said, what are some of the opportunities if it could help create a critical mass to support public transportation. Okay, so that's where we're headed here in the future. Next slide then. So just sort of getting our heads around some of these transportation issues. Looking as folks came into the room, we put up a map in the back there and asked SAC members to put a green dot where you live, where you work, and just sort of map out that route that you take, whether it's in your personal vehicle or public transportation. So first of all, how many people drove here tonight? Right? And I don't know, Sean, you work here. Are there public transportation routes serving this area?
Yeah, there
Easily.
are actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So knowing that that is an option, right? But again, it looks like we're all using, and how many drove alone? Right? And I know Sam and I came from the same place. We may not be going back the same place. Ryan, some of y'all are coming from the Brooklyn Park neighborhood, right? And some other neighborhoods. And again, thinking about what that means for traffic. So again, just trying to wrap your heads around that, a lot of the things that we talk about also maybe like to say, kind of do a reality check as to what you know, what choices you're actually making. So, so talk about what the county's policies are is based on Plan 2040. We want to focus development and infrastructure investment to support targeted growth areas. Again, those are areas in close proximity of housing, commercial opportunities, employment options, and transit. Because the way, as you can imagine, Anne Arundel County has been built out is you've got homes in one area, commercial in another, job centers in another area. And that may not always make sense to then walk to or bike to. Maybe some of those bicycle and pedestrian facilities may not have been built at the time when those homes or those employment centers may have been built as well. And when these things are so spread out, Brian might be able to get into this, is it makes it really challenging to then connect those dots with public transportation, have it make sense or, you know, make that feasible. So again, sort of keeping in mind these transportation issues, when we then talk about land use also zoning, and where we're planning, like I said, is in a couple months when we actually draw on these maps of where you think we may want to increase density or where we may want to decrease density maybe for any properties that may not necessarily be developed at the time. Okay, so a lot of this interconnectedness I just want to stress. Okay. So talking about regional and countywide transportation in the planning context, these transportation systems connect us from our local neighborhoods to places where we work, shop, learn, play, all those good things. But it involves collaboration, right? That's we have our county staff as well as state staff here as well, because chances are you didn't just take local county roads to get here tonight. You took state roads as well, and even an interstate probably. So the county has updated its master transportation plan, the Move Anne Arundel, in 2019. It included key goals for transportation systems that provide practical and reliable transportation choices for users, a safe transportation system, a resilient transportation system that minimizes environmental impacts, and a transportation system that is in good condition. Move Anne Arundel's recommendations were incorporated into Plan 2040. We did provide a link to Move Anne Arundel in your, I think that I created a folder that says interested in more, dive deeper into this folder. So there was that option for you to sort of review some of those recommendations in that plan. There's also the Vision Zero plan, which is where the goal is to reduce traffic fatalities. And Walk and Roll is a detailed plan for pedestrian and bike improvements around the county. So again, these plans are coordinated with regional transportation planning efforts like Resilience 2050 that plans for transportation around the Baltimore metropolitan area and the Central Maryland Transit Development Plan. Next slide then. So like I said, is we're gonna, how we're gonna go about this discussion. Brian Ulrich here from our County Office of Transportation will launch into the transit study. And then again, we'll talk about the various communities within Region 1, what some of the concerns have been, what those projects are, and maybe some of your recommendations. Okay. Brian, I'll hand it off to you.
Yep, so if you don't know, in about 2018, the county took over some transit routes from RTA and now provides county buses, county transit service. And in the north, I guess, Region 1 area, we have the 201, 202, Brooklyn Park. What else? Oh, and the north. So there's some routes, say Glen Burnie to Arundel Mills, into the Arundel Mills. There's Brooklyn Park that goes from Cromwell up to Brooklyn Park, a route. And then there's a North County call and ride, which is you schedule a ride, they'll come pick you up, curb to curb service. And so that is kind of from the airport to the northeast, generally speaking. We might have a map of it, but, and then there's also other people that provide services. There's the BWI Business Partnership, shuttle bus. MTA, of course, has routes. And RTA comes into the county from Howard County. RTA is a regional transit agency, mainly focused on Howard County, but operates regionally a little bit in, Prince George's and Arundel. And of course, there's, Mark and Light Rail as well from the state. So, those are all the services, that are provided. We've heard from other areas that people did not know about the county transit service, and we did a couple years ago, or I guess earlier, maybe a year and a half ago, we're working on a transit development plan update to our transit plan. We just adopted the walk, bike and ped master plan. We're updating our transit plan, which is done every 5 years. And of course, part of the community survey was that most people were unaware that the county offered transit. So that's part of our to-do list, is to get the word out there better. So we do have, I don't know what you got next slide. Oh, there's the call and ride zone. And there's some of the county routes, as you can see. So Brooklyn Park. And Brooklyn Park is yes, thank you, Tanya. It is free. So all our services are free. That changed, I guess, either with the pandemic or just before the pandemic. And so, what I was gonna say, Brooklyn Park is a deviated fixed route, which is, so the county is not very dense, even up in the county. And so, it's not the traditional, everybody's, working outside and I mean, living outside the city, say, driving into Baltimore, working downtown, where you'd have bus lines, running on major corridors. So there's a lot of things spread out. And so there's just not enough density for traditional fixed route in a lot of the county. We are running fixed route, but there's not as much. So Brooklyn Park in the area, it will deviate. So anywhere within a quarter mile, I believe, of that route, if you schedule it, you can schedule to have it deviate and go, say you're the next block over, you can make a request and get them to pick you up at the next block over. So that's deviated fixed route. And then the call and ride again is on demand, so you can get curb to curb service, and go from anywhere in that zone to anywhere in that zone. There's a 2-hour, reservation time, lead time that we ask for, just for scheduling purposes. But we are introducing, we have a Pingo app, and we can send this stuff to you guys, but Pingo is an automated scheduling software. And so people can call the phone number or go on the app and you can schedule a ride. And once that happens, we'll be able to reduce that scheduling time ahead of time. And so it'd be more true on demand, where you can schedule it. And then based on other trips, you can hop on the bus and get where you're going. And then we also recently adopted Passio, which lets you know where the bus is. Most of our calls were, hey, where's the bus at? I'm at the bus stop. It's 5 minutes late. And with the app, you can see exactly, we've got GPS on the buses and you see exactly where the bus is, and helps you plan your trip, or at least you don't have to go out there if it's still 15 minutes away. You don't have to go out and sit in the elements, especially on a cold day or whatever, rainy day. You can say, oh, I got a couple more minutes, I can wait, and then go out to the stop. So it makes it a little more convenient for the user. So that's basically what we have for transit. Next slide, we do have the draft transit development plan. Like I said, we actually have a meeting on next Tuesday night at the Annapolis Mall to present this. There's also a link on our main webpage with the draft plan. So if you can't make the meeting, we have the plan already up there. We'll probably take the presentation or put some version of the presentation online for after that meeting. And we're looking for public comment. What's in there, what's not in there, what are we missing? What are we wasting our time and effort on? What should we be doing? What shouldn't we be doing? This was our collaborated effort between stakeholders and different agencies and different departments in the county. But again, we're trying to serve the public. So if people want a service or don't want a service, that's what we need to hear. So that's why we're coming out to the public and looking for input. So if you can share it with any of your neighbors or community organizations or other organizations you're part of, we'd appreciate that too. The more comment we get, the better plan it will be.
Can you repeat that date and time, please?
It's 27th, I believe that's Tuesday. Right, 1 second. At 6 o'clock, 6 to 7:30 at the Annapolis Mall, at the library in the Annapolis Mall.
Can you also spell Passio, please?
Passio.
Thank you.
Yep. And if you go to AnnArundelCounty.org/transportation, there's links to all this stuff online as well.
So since we're here, how many folks do use public transit?
The light rail, go to Rangers games.
Light rail.
Right?
It's not a daily.
For me, yeah, on the county.
Yeah, to go to Baltimore.
Okay. And so what works and doesn't work? And for folks that don't take public transit, what is preventing you from taking public transit?
The way it lags, or like it's not consistent at times, to your schedule of when you're out there.
Yeah.
And when you're supposed to be getting on or getting off.
I mean, where I live, there's no regular bus service. I didn't know there was some, call and ride thing, but,
Okay,
I don't think I would take that. I can just hop, I was 5 minutes away from the light rail. I can just hop in my car and be there in 5 minutes and park at North Lincoln Station.
And anyone going on the bus from here to the Anne Arundel Community College will have an issue at times too,
what type of issue?
like consistency on the
I
bus.
can say, okay,
Right. From Brooklyn Park, that's region one,
yeah.
that's.
So what would make it easier is we're hearing consistency. What else?
I don't do it because you're just time bound,
Okay.
so.
I mean, I used to live in DC. And I used to take the bus to get to the metro, so I'm, familiar with that system, and that was nice. I mean, I didn't like taking the bus. When I lived closer to the metro station, that was nicer, but that's all often expensive in DC. But, I understand, but when you don't have a regular bus system,
Mhm.
and I can't imagine, I don't know what the system is in Brooklyn Park, how quickly it goes, doesn't sound like it goes very frequently. Then I can't imagine it's something that you would use regularly to go, say if you wanted to go, I don't know, to Baltimore or something for a concert or something like that. And you need to like driving, so you wanted to drink or something like that. That would be perfect use for public transportation. But if the bus is not gonna run past 10 PM or something like that, then.
Is there a bus schedule posted somewhere?
Somewhere. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, so.
I think
It's online and on the app.
hard to comment when you're not using it, because you don't need, it's not a necessity, right? So, and when I see the bus come up Ritchie Highway, right? It doesn't look full, right? So I'd be curious to see like the number of average riders who's using it as a daily transportation, right? We use it all the time in Baltimore. We use, I think it's called the Charm City Connector, or, it's a free service and it has a designated route, but it's dense and there's always people getting on and off. Not everyone needs to get off, somewhere in Glen Burnie Park. So it's hard to comment. I would say I use it. It works fine for me because I'm able to plan my route, see what I need to do to get to where I'm going. But if you're not riding it every day, it's hard to, I think it would be hard to comment.
That's kind of intimidating too, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was-
And right now, primarily, we are serving people that don't have other options.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's not as frequent, it doesn't have the frequency and the reliability. It is just because it doesn't have enough money put into the system. So right now, it's people that don't really have another way that need to use the service. But that's why we're trying, and in the draft plan, you'll see, we're looking for more micro transit, smaller zones. Trying to increase the coverage to get those people that can't make it. And because there's such a variety of where people are coming from and going to, but again, trying to cover those, and again, maybe make some of those trips, like you talked about, usable. Maybe not every trip would be usable by transit, but maybe give you an option to think about using it if you need it for certain situations.
How do you decide on the routes? Like, do you have some kind of,
So there's
Yeah.
software there's transit software that shows, transit propensity of ridership based on demographic information. And so that kind of gives you your trip generators, and then again, your attractions by your destinations, employment or, commercial. And so then you can play with the software and try to fix, pick the route that will pick up the most people, and hit the most places. But again, not be too long, so these trips aren't long and arduous. And again, in our density, it's hard to have, efficient routes. So again, we're in that situation where maybe it runs every hour, which isn't terribly convenient if you're, gotta leave, get a call and you gotta go somewhere and you gotta wait 45 minutes for the bus. It's just not gonna look, you wanna use it very often. So, that's definitely something we've heard, and again, it's a funding issue, we can increase frequency, but we need more buses and more money and more drivers. And so, right now we're just trying to do what we can and serve the people we can. And then, as we get more money or is there more demand, then we'll expand the service, both frequency and coverage. So.
I have a question. We can't take public comment at this time. It'll be at the end. You're fine. Just hold your thought. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So when considering routes, are you considering places of employment or more residential to places of shopping and personal?
So it's primarily, for employment to begin with. Sometimes obviously it overlaps, but primarily employment, to get people that need to get to work, the primary focus.
In that same vein, most of it seemed like I passed a bus today and it was going to, I think it said the Tapsco station, right here, Nursery Road. It just seems kind of far to go to all the way to Tapsco, light.
Right, when the light rails are there.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it was going to Tapsco, which is a light rail station, but
Right.
that's,
Disconnect, okay.
there's a light rail station much closer.
Right.
That's what I mean, it seems like, that, when I lived in DC, that was like the focus was get, the bus picks you up and takes you to the metro station.
Right.
And then you get on the metro and then you go where you need to go. But I guess it's just a little bit of a different focus when you're focusing towards a different population where you're not just focusing solely on the commuter that's going into the city.
Correct.
Okay, so again, we can come back to this, the transit discussion, at the end when we do our recap, but sort of pivoting now to our road network, and we'll start in the Hanover Harmons area. So the image on the right, and these will come up here as we go through the communities. This was our feedback map, that we put out for the public, several months ago. And people were able to drop a pin, virtually here and identify whether they love something. So we have blue diamonds are where people said, I have an idea of what this potentially could be, which we identified as dream it. The yellow squares are sort of fix it ideas. And then the green circles are where people love a certain amenity or a certain thing within the county. As you can imagine, people have a lot of ideas, especially on transportation, right? So especially tonight, we've got 2.5 hours or so dedicated to talking about these transportation issues. We received about 177 comments. And like I said, is you can sort of see where some of these comments then are focused. And you can actually go online to our Region 1 hub site and actually look at the back end of this and click on it to see what people were saying about some of these specific areas. But you may be able to even take guesses if there were areas where people said, fix it, if there might not be a sidewalk, or you notice that there are some areas where there's significant traffic congestion. So some of the main issues that we had heard about during a lot of our outreach was that given a lot of the warehousing that's happened over the past 20 or so years, some residential, there isn't that type of connection. There aren't good sidewalks or bike facilities. There is some mixed use, sort of in the Ridge Road area, its own mixed use. And you sort of have that connection between some of the homes and the employment center. And people also talked about then connectivity issues around the Arundel Mills area. What are some of the other areas for folks that live in the Hanover Harmons or visit the Hanover Harmons area? What do you experience transportation wise?
So we're ignoring all the other side of the airport we're focused on.
Right, yeah, we'll get to the Linthicum, Ferndale area in a minute. Does anybody travel over there? Mostly warehousing?
Yeah, it's warehouse.
Yeah, right, you might take 100 over to the mall.
Yeah, we take,
Right.
I'll take the back road. Honestly, this side of the airport is a pretty enjoyable ride. It's never, my wife likes to take, I guess it's Dorsey to, I don't know the exact names, but we take Campme to around the airport to Dorsey, I think,
Sure.
to Arundel Mills, instead of taking 100 and then
Sure.
fighting that traffic, trying to get to the mall. It's enjoyable. The roads are a little rough by the airport, but it's not overly crowded.
Okay,
It is it's an enjoyable, non-stressful ride around that. I find it. I'm not driving it during rush hour though.
sure.
That part, so I kind of agree with you as well, where I go for a trip for just leisure to that area. I moved from that area, so.
Any other comments on things that you love? We don't often hear people say that it's an enjoyable ride.
I mean, have you ever tried to get into Arundel Mills Boulevard from
Yeah.
100? It's like,
Yeah,
not enjoyable.
right.
The VWI trail goes along that stretch,
Great.
the road there. It's probably the most neglected part of the trail, I would say. It's probably the least, people don't, people go on that side, they do the whole loop, but not everyone does the whole loop. I actually haven't gone on that side in a while, because I mostly run with my dogs, I don't make it that far, but, what I did with my bike, it was pretty. But I don't remember too many issues with traffic with cars. There is a intersection with the over by the Northrop Grumman thing, but I don't remember, I mean, it was well marked, I don't think there was too many issues with that.
And sorry, just to interrupt, we do have Tanya Osmond from the Office of Transportation here virtually, and she may be able to talk about some of the additional bike ped facilities that I think are looking to be a spur from this BWI loop as well. And I think maybe might be a segue here into our next slide, talk about some of the projects and studies. We can keep talking about.
Yeah, and if I could just raise
issues
from
and
the
concerns.
standpoint of, one of the business centers of the area. I know one of our biggest challenges moving forward in the next 10 to 15 years likely would be with the additional job growth in the area, out in this area, as you spoke to. Just can't let the moment go that, we, the airport, and I think the business community would strongly desire to have Hanover Road at some point advanced. I know it's at least half of it's currently funded to design by the county right now, and I'm still waiting on construction money for that half of the project to move on. But of course, the back end of that, tying it into a new interchange along 295 would be serving the area with all the demands for all the job growth, truck traffic and so forth coming in, because you've got a lot of folks who come in off 195 who are also using the same network of roadways to get around that area. And then on the south side, 100, but somewhere in between is where a lot of this activity is ongoing now that's grown up north of Arundel Mills, south of, 295, 195 interchange. That really kind of deserves its own interchange. And I know it's in study, I think, right now with the state, at least, it's expected to be the DOT. So the back end that connects to the interchange. So just wanted to voice our, desires for that project to be advanced.
Right.
For sure.
And I'll also introduce Kayvon Hawkins from State Department of Transportation, State Highway, if he wants to weigh in as well. So.
Quick question on 295, because it probably touches, several parts of the district we're talking about. The truck traffic cutoff, is that at 175 or is it north of that? Anybody know?
75.
Where it becomes the parkway then.
Yeah, I think it's supposed, I don't know how it's enforced really, but it's supposed to stop trucks north of 175.
I don't really see trucks on that part, I do. On 295?
I thought they got rid of the rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the 175 corridor, there's a lot of concerns about the amount of truck traffic.
Coming off of 295, getting diverted.
Oh, I thought that it was restricted south of one.
I thought it was, I think there's a restriction line.
South.
Yeah.
You gotta get off, you gotta get off.
And they're taking 175 over through Jessup to 95.
Right. So
95.
you're coming past this district and then you have to get off by one.
One seventy-five,
If you want to go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the projects we got going on, including, Hanover Road. So these are some of the projects. We do have a Ridge Road corridor study, in association with a lot of those developments that are coming in. There's some, development here, development there, and with some experiences in the other parts of the county where developers did come in, did their frontage. But, not every property develops and not every property develops, evenly and at the same time. So trying to get a consistent cross section and then, as developments come in, then the county will jump in and fill in those missing gaps. And so we're all working off the same plan, Marley Boulevard. But anyway, trying to, prevent that from happening or at least get ahead of it a little bit. So that's the Ridge Road study. The Hanover Road study, the NEPA study was complete, and approved. And it's kind of just waiting on a champion for funding. So the county, when a development came in, was concerned that we might lose the right of way in the corridor. So the county went and funded a study for at least the Hanover Road portion to, preserve the right of way. And I believe the construction is being proposed, in the, say 29-30 timeframe now. So there's funding for the county road portion of it, of Hanover Road, to build that section of it. And then we're just waiting for a regional champion to push for that 295 interchange. Once more development comes in or big growth comes in and people, need it more, that will push it to get constructed.
Is that 2030 start construction? Expected?
Right, yeah.
Not
I have
completion?
to look exactly. I can get you that date. I think FY 29-30.
FY, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian. Can you hear me? This is Tavon. Okay. Yeah, I just kind of want to, piggyback what you were saying, as far as that 295 portion, which is the state, state funded portion of that project. As that project is on hold, but just to give some detail, we got a lot of projects that's in, development right now, as far as studying these improvements, and that 295 project, Hanover Road is obviously one of them. And it's just a study right now, to widen 295 from 4 lanes to 6, from Maryland 100 to 195, which includes that interchange of Hanover Road. And it's right now we have obviously some funding for planning, but the total cost for that project is over $247 million. So hopefully when some new funding come around, we'll be able to move forward with this type of development. But it's definitely going to improve the traffic flow, in and out of the airport in that area. That's all I wanted to add.
That's good, thank you. And then there's some other projects. We do have a plan or projects, again, with Tavon or SHA's help. We're working on extending the BWI trail, or connection from the BWI trail over to Arundel Mills along Dorsey Road and then down Arundel Mills Boulevard. Both those projects are in design right now, and it's being completed by State Highway, but we're providing the local match. And I think we paid for at least portion of the design, just the county to begin with, but working on getting federal funding and working together to construct those improvements.
I'm sorry, where was that?
Dorsey Road from the 170, where the BWI trail is there. You can see it, yep, right there, and then it goes across to, that's Ridge or New Ridge, or on the other side, it's Arundel Mills Boulevard, and down to the Arundel Way, right there where Ridge, the other part of Ridge Road, I guess, breaks off of Arundel Mills Boulevard. So kind of make that pedestrian connection. If you've been to Arundel Mills, you've seen people walking there anyway without anything, so we're trying to at least get them off the road. Or they're usually off the road, but make it safer. That's what we got going on.
Yeah, are there any other projects that you all might recommend in this area? Looking ahead? And I know from our earlier conversation, it didn't sound like a lot of folks actually, you might just bypass it, right? Go into the mall or maybe not necessarily go into this area. So I imagine we'll have some more livelier discussion when we get to Lincoln, Ferndale and the Brooklyn Park area. Okay.
Hey, this is Tanya. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Something, I can't seem to make my video work, but that's okay. So one of the projects, I put it in the chat. Did you mention the Patapsco Regional Greenway, Brian?
Oh, I did not. No.
So that is a project that's in this area that this group may want to take note of, that the Baltimore Metropolitan Council is spearheading, at least at the start. They did a study. It's a 22-mile trail essentially that runs through the Patapsco Park and then connects all the way to Carroll County from Baltimore City. There is a piece that goes through the county that tries to connect to the BWI trail loop. What's that? So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. They've just started to begin the design process. The Baltimore Metropolitan Council plans to take it to 30% design, and in hopes that each jurisdiction will then take it through full design and construction. There has been some construction done in Howard County near the Guinness plant, for example. So you might want to just put that on your radar.
Because there's a sign that over by the BWI trail where it says this way to Patapsco. But I've never tried to do it because honestly, I was like, how would you get to Patapsco from here? Easily.
Really? Yeah, well, this is going to be a hard surface trail. So
I think it's through the city roads or like through the roads.
yeah,
I never tried to follow it because it just seemed too challenging.
treacherous, I know, yeah.
Did you all want
You
provide?
want to talk about the different bike infrastructure, Tanya?
Sure, yeah. So these are some examples of different bike infrastructure that Walk and Roll in Arundel presented as the priority for when we build out the network. We really want to try to separate bicycles from the cars and pedestrians from the cars as well. So these particular bike infrastructure are separated bike lanes where you've got a vertical barrier that's separating the bike lane from the vehicular travel, also a shared use path. In this case, it's more like a side path in that it's within the road right of way. And then probably the least protected, but still more than your average, is the buffered bike lane where there's a painted buffer that separates the cars from the bicycles.
So one other area that we want to talk about here in this area is the BWI Mark station. And so transit-oriented development is one of the tools planners use here, where we do envision residential, commercial employment being really close to transit, right? Transit-oriented type of development. So that people aren't necessarily having to get in a vehicle and go somewhere, that you do, that transit is able to be supported by that critical mass of people or activity in that area. So one of the public transportation stations that we have in this area is the BWI Mark station. Again, looking at the opportunities and constraints, it's close to highways, the airport. However, there are some environmental resources in the area that restrict development, as well as zoning regulations and even airport regulations, I think, for a certain part of that area. You know, there is also another concept called like Aerotropolis, if folks have heard about it, where it's that same idea where instead of it just being a public transportation system, it's more of this airport system where you are able to sort of put together the industrial uses that utilize the airport, people flying in for meetings, finding that office space, as well as residential units. In our last meeting at the Chesapeake Arts Center, we talked about how a lot of the Southwest employees get on the light rail, get off, walk a few blocks, and that's their sort of, what was the term that we used? We didn't call it crash pad,
Right.
right? It was another term. But again, so there is this, you can sort of piggyback off of that activity that happens at the airport. And see about consolidating some of that density or activity there. The county is currently working on a transit-oriented development, just call it TOD, study. And next slide. And one of the concepts is, again, where you've got the MARC station, but again, you see that the stream and the other environmental resources really cutting along where the rail line is. And then there might be a possibility of some development in the southern corner as well as in the northwest corner, adjacent to where some of the existing office buildings are, as well as some of the new townhomes along Ridge Road have been built. Any reaction to this?
I've ridden by there before. It's a beautiful little space of forest.
Yeah,
I
okay.
hope that they preserve as much as they can.
Aren't there several pieces already in the development queue there?
So that's the thing is, the TOD designation by the state was something, the county was looking to pursue, but looking at it now, you may say that the horse is out of the stable, and some of these properties have actually, even though it's maybe zoned mixed use, some of have turned over to industrial type of uses.
Like, isn't 2 already planned for apartments and townhomes or some combination of something in that area, right?
On the east side or the west side
So
of?
the west side, I think, is built,
built,
right,
right.
by,
Yeah.
it was, I think Beezer's in there building townhomes.
Mhm.
Across the street, is that part of Aerotropolis, or number 2 is?
Mhm. I believe that is part of that area, yeah. So this, again, this is just one of the first times that we'll be talking about TOD in this region. And maybe it doesn't make sense necessarily in this specific area, but maybe it makes more sense in the Linthicum, Ferndale, even Cromwell we had talked about at our last meeting. But again, does this look feasible for folks? If, picture yourself if you were to live in 1 or 2. And, is that realistic?
Mark, when you have these the schematics and plans, if you could show roads and street names and arrows, north arrows, that would be really helpful. I can't really determine where you are right now.
So
Is that
this
where
is
Norfolk
the,
is?
that big
Yeah, that's.
thing there in the middle is the rail,
One is the north.
and then the highway is in between it. The, which highway is that one?
195 and 295.
Yeah, so basically you'd be in between the railroad and the highway.
Right.
And the airport is down in this,
Yeah.
this
There's a
area.
runway right there.
But
Oh,
it's nice
yeah,
forest
right
there.
there.
And I guess that's you asked about number 1 there. My question is noise abatement for the runway.
Yeah, so I was
Right.
letting everyone talk. I didn't want
Yeah.
to speak about airport only issues first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there.
I mean, you figure somebody moving in that area might be out and about, moving, traveling, it's possible,
So if you probably looked at our noise zone, and it's right at the edge, almost outside, almost entirely outside of the noise zone. That's because presently, most often, we don't have some departures that go that direction to make the noise. There are landings that go by, but that doesn't excuse, overflight noise, which we hear about all the time. People are outside the noise zone and people complaining a lot, regardless of whether they're in a noise zone or not. So that proximity to the airport is going to expose them to noise that is, on the ground. That's, aircraft landing, they're gonna hear the thrust and so forth, the takeoffs and maintenance and run-ups and all sorts of noise that is not just overflight exposure in the noise zone that you might be exposed to most often, right? So, and we even worked with trying to get the folks in, number 2 area to give serious consideration because of those things to even soundproofing some of those, because if you're gonna put them up there, the wisest thing to do is to try to avoid complaints, to construct them with that in mind. And yes, that adds to construction, but if they want to do that and they want to be that close to take advantage of it, we recommended strongly that they do soundproof them to be.
Doesn't the
compatible, even though
county
they're
require a
outside.
noise study if you're within a certain proximity to the airport?
It does, but you need to be in the airport noise zone typically for us to require that study.
And that's when you're saying like having that built into it, that's kind of where I'm going. Someone that would be living and affording that area near the airport, and that like non-family area, would probably would not mind paying for that additional.
There might be some.
Well, I'm just in general, but I get it. I mean, I wouldn't, but just thinking about what,
Just out of
who
curiosity.
would purchase or live right there.
And who, I guess, has Northrop Grumman approached you all to suggest that they're gonna unload that parking lot? Curiosity?
No, so
Okay.
the study was done because this area was identified as TOD.
Okay,
master
all right.
plan. And
Just
so
making
then
sure.
the consultant just looked at what developable area
Okay.
was there, and there's not a lot, so.
Right.
That was one of the potential, if you're gonna do anything, that's probably one of the only places you can do something.
I mean, I think you're hitting on a good point. There's just not a lot of opportunity for mixed use or transit oriented development in general. So,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to preserve that option there, even if it's not what's.
So we are supposed to buy, just so you know, a small sliver, but some of that parcel 1, we're actually supposed to buy it. Because it's in what we call a runway protection zone, so it's clear of any use that would be incompatible with aviation, potential accidents on the ground. So it's close to, where we had to preserve airport operations for. So it's good to know that type of thing that you look into that.
Okay, Tanya, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I was in a meeting not long ago where the Economic Development Corporation new hire, I forget her name, was present, and she coined a term that I hadn't heard before, which I think is really cool, and it's trail-oriented development. And I think this, like I said, this is a region right where we're looking at that the Patapsco Greenway Trail is supposed to go through. And there's so much to be said for putting businesses, coffee shops, things like that, sub shops, right along trails, like you see it in Severna Park with Big Bean and Sophie's Crepes. And they've really turned these places into places to meet, to greet your friends, to take a break from your bike ride. And so I think there's a lot to be said, and I just wanted you all to think about that as you're thinking about land use and transportation and active transportation, that those two can really work together well. That's it.
Okay.
Makes a lot more sense when you think about it from that standpoint, you know what I mean, as more of an attraction. I don't know about housing, but, a place, a destination to go with friends, to go to the bike trail or go for a walk, sit down, have a cup of coffee afterwards or whatever. As opposed to why would someone want to live right there?
Yeah, and I don't want to suggest that the airport doesn't think that number 2 site can't be an enjoyable place to live. It could be enjoyable. We just want to make sure it's optimized, right? With respect to the concerns of the folks who live there when they're there and they're trying to enjoy life inside a home that's a little better off with respect to protected from the noise. So
Do y'all get any complaints from the new residents there across from?
I don't keep track of the noise complaints. We get a lot of noise complaints. We can certainly check our logs to see if we do. It's a good point of reference for that site.
There's nothing over on that side of the trail. No place to stop.
So it might be a good idea to lean into
Yeah.
commercial, maybe,
I mean, right now,
in that area.
there's very few places to stop along the BWI trail for
Yeah.
any kind of refreshment. I don't think there's. Here, unless you wanna cross the, unless you wanna go across the very, very busy, which road is that one? The the one where people are going 50 miles per hour on the other side of the airport.
Right,
I have done it like once or twice to go to the bathroom. It's
Yeah.
terrifying.
okay. Okay. So yeah, we could come back to this, but then moving on to the Linthicum Ferndale, again, starting with our issues and concerns. We, again, during our outreach, heard a lot about B&A Boulevard, a lot of the congestion issues, traffic congestion issues there. The light rail station, that there's a lot of missed opportunities for more housing and activity around those, especially within walking distance of the stations. Also hear about the concerns about safety, crime around the train stations, around the light rail stations rather. So again, only providing here a snapshot of some of the comments that we heard, but what do you all typically then some of the transportation issues that you're have concerns about in this area?
Everything I have.
What's that?
So that's everything I have.
Okay,
B&A Boulevard. Definitely the light rail stations, yeah. I just was running today on the trail and, I saw a guy, panhandling along 8th Avenue and then, cross the street with his little suitcase and then jump on the Cromwell. Well, I think that's where he said.
okay,
Jump on the Cromwell light rail station, I guess, to go into the city. I don't know where he's going. And then Ferndale Station, you know, has a lot of issues. But there's a lot more potential for, you know, stuff over there. It's definitely underutilized. And, I mean, I've brought up issues with sidewalks. My neighborhood where I live, I have to be cautious about where I'm going. I have to wear like, when I'm at these times during the winter season, I have to put on reflective gear because we don't have sidewalks everywhere when I walk my dog. So
Mhm.
I don't want to get hit by a car.
These are all the issues?
No. So this encompasses Cromwell, right? Come down B&A.
Yep.
So I always have issues with people crossing B&A from the light rail, like a more controlled crossing pattern would be helpful. There's constantly like people standing in the middle of the road because they're not waiting for the light. I don't know if you get like a traffic guard out there giving jaywalking tickets or whatever, but it is a little concerning because sometimes in the morning I'll be heading, like the Chamber of Commerce is down there, you have the town centers right there, you know, right to Ritchie Highway, and it's like people are just literally just straight across through the bushes, right into the midst of B&A.
I agree with that.
And one specific thing on B&A too, and I brought this up multiple times. I think I brought this up on the first meeting, which I didn't, wasn't able to attend, the sidewalk. And I saw that was on the plan. Sidewalks over by North County High School, from Edgewood to North County, there's no sidewalks.
Mhm.
And kids, I mean, you can see kids walking to school every day along the road and they're going 40 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour on that road. And high school kids are walking every day. There's an elementary school there too, but I think most parents don't let their kids walk to.
They're walking too.
Yeah,
There's a crossing.
It's Hilltop Elementary.
yeah, top of the elementary's over there too.
That's the route I take to work, so, it's supposed to be like 35
Yeah,
miles, and it's definitely not that. And it definitely gets backed up, it definitely gets even more backed up when there's,
which is safer.
school hours.
It's 40 miles an hour till you get past Burwood Shopping Center, then it drops to 30 miles an hour. The high school is a big point of congestion right there in North County. It is,
Don't be by.
but that's the school, that's not, I mean, it's just one way in, one way out. But that's not really like, what are you gonna do with the road? I don't think there's anything you can do to be an A to fix that mess, so that's not exactly transportation, so.
But it'd be safer if there were sidewalks. There's a lot of those kids miss those buses and they walk. Or they're just walking.
Yeah, and we do have a safe routes to school slide here shortly,
Yeah.
which we can touch on.
And Lindale as well, to get to Lindale, Broadview does not have sidewalks. And I see kids walking on Broadview. That's a road that, you know, I walk with my dog and people, that road is technically 25, but, you know, people go 40 on that road consistently. And then there's cars parked on the side. There's no sidewalk, so, you know, it narrows out at times. I see the, North County kids running track,
Yeah,
cross country on that road.
well, that's the thing, they do that all over the country,
Yeah.
they're running in the streets.
Yeah.
They've been doing that for 40 years.
Well, they're trying to get to the BWI trail, because I see them along that, but there's no way to get to the BWI trail has sidewalks. Because there's a gap in the sidewalk, there's a sidewalk gap between them and North County.
Well, you're talking about the schools too. They changed the access or pickup to Lincecum Elementary from the front of the school to the back of the school. So the parking lots and the driveway and stuff are in the front of the school off the school lane, but they're exiting the kids from the rear of the school now onto Benton Avenue. So if you're over there anytime on Benton, I mean, that's a little tiny narrow neighborhood street and it needs to be 3 lanes because you're barely getting with the parking there, with the houses on the one side, and then they come down and they park up waiting to get in to let, to pick the kids up. It's curvy, got a little bit of a hill to it. You better be going slow at, school times. Because it's a jigsaw puzzle to get in and out. And what they're doing is forcing some of the traffic or some of the folks that live in the neighborhood to go back into, it's called Shipley Oaks there or something, to cut through and get away from the Benton Avenue traffic. And it's a big cut through from Burwood to the Lincecum Shopping Center to go across there. And most everybody knows that cut across. And you're going down the back way from the school and it's a nightmare sometimes.
I think about my experience when I'm visiting Vincent's farm. I don't know if there is a minimum, the distance between traffic lights, because there's a traffic light that's facing south, or no, that would be east, away from the farm. There's a traffic light prior to the farm, and then there's a traffic light right at, or is that ordinance? And the ordinance were, so there, that's a small span, and I'm thinking like, there's enough, there's residential, and then that's a commercial, of course. And there's no traffic light, so if you are coming out of the farm, trying to turn left onto 648, it's bad. Yeah, I have to like go all the way around. I'm just thinking about that experience can be improved.
And it bottlenecks, it constantly, B&A from 170 is single lane, opens up at the Beltway to 2 lanes, gets past Burwood Shopping Center, it bottlenecks back to 1 lane, past the high school, come around to Broadview, opens back up.
Yeah.
And I dropped my son up, and this is my 7th year for a high schooler in North County. It is like a racetrack, and it is coming across Maple, right?
Yep.
There's cars turning into the school there on the right, escaping the name of me right now.
St.
St.
Philip
Neri. You have people turning right onto Maple. You have people flying in the left lane to try to cut everyone off. But then that light at Ordnance Road is backed up almost to Maple with left-hand turning traffic. So it's just like kind of a Frogger situation with your car. And then once you get past Ordnance, you're back to a bottleneck. And you're backed up at the high school, which is, they have 2,600 students. And you got buses and cars and walkers.
You're calling that ordinance actually Furnace Branch.
Furnace Branch, it does, sorry. Burwood, that light of the Burwood, but, You gotta be Jeff Gordon some days to get it somewhere.
What turn is it for that?
Yeah, it turns,
Yeah, it turns.
turns branch there and then turns. Yeah, it's-
It's
And then
gonna
it
be, it's gonna
bottlenecks
be
again,
worse
so-
when they make Maple a four-way intersection.
Yeah, what is going on right there? Is that, what are they building
17 houses.
homes? Oh my God. And then it bottlenecks, once you come around to Broadview, it opens to 2 lanes, but then once you get to 8th Avenue and come across, it bottlenecks back to 1. It's just constantly, I mean, residential to commercial, it opens up.
Sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of accidents I see right at Ordnance in that little sector between Ordnance, Maple, there's a ton of, and where St. Mary, a ton of accidents.
Coming at the Burwood Shopping Center, there's
Yeah.
accidents all the time.
Yeah.
Because you have people coming from the Lincoln side, trying to turn left or right onto B&A, people coming out of Burwood at the same time, and there's 2 entrances. So it's a little.
I saw somebody crossing the road, from that residential area from across from Burwood. And I thought, wow, are they crazy? And I'm like, wait a minute, why shouldn't they be able to cross the road to go to the grocery store? I mean, like, they live across the street from the grocery store. Why shouldn't they be able to cross the road safely to go to the grocery store? Without having to walk like 5 miles, I mean, I don't know. I saw them crossing it and they were like literally running like they were taking their life in their hands. And I thought, there's no crosswalk there. There's literally no way for them to cross from that. They live right across from the grocery store and they have no way to get there safely.
Okay. Brian, what projects we got going on? And the state as well.
There's a lot of projects, in that area. There's a couple listed on the slide, but there's more than that.
Next slide.
Yeah, so, we had a study of Andover Road and we did some site distance improvements. That was one of the issues. But there is a whole larger project that just didn't get funded that would make sidewalks and improvements to Andover Road. There was a study of West Nursery Road that was done that had improvements that again, we did a couple improvements, but not everything. The other one there identified as the Linthicum was part of the Safe Routes to School studies that looked at 17 elementary schools across the county, kind of spread out geographically. And so Linthicum was one of the ones that studied and identified improvements that could be made. But there's a lot more. There's you can see there, the BWI trail extension, I guess it ends at West Maple, and it's under design right now to carry it up to Nursery Road. We've got the Bell Grove Road safety improvements, trying to make improvements to Bell Grove Road, to add, kind of fill in the missing gaps of sidewalk and again, to add bike facilities, extend kind of that trail that's there or side path. We had a project on Nursery Road, for sidewalk that we were working with the state on. But there were a lot of right-of-way issues, and so that's kind of stalled. It's kind of on our needs list, but again, we need additional funding. Let's see, we are working, and this kind of in and out, but, looking at how to better connect the, Cromwell Station with kind of downtown Glen Burnie and the trail. And there's some, development going on, in the counties. Was county land, I guess, and sold for development or, dense mixed-use development. So trying to tie in the town center to Cromwell and also the trail to Cromwell. We've heard a lot of issues with people crossing that road there. Speaking of safe routes to school, there's a Hammond's Ferry sidewalk. One side of Hammond's Ferry doesn't have sidewalks, kind of a relatively short missing gap. That we have a school sidewalk project. I'm sure there's more, but there's a lot of little things going on in the area that we're working on. And I know that the school issue, some people have been talking about providing another access or something might be the only way to alleviate some of those traffic issues, but of course that would take a lot of money as well.
So again, based on some of the issues that we just chatted about, and then some of the capital projects and studies that are underway or will be underway, any other projects?
I got one more project, sorry.
Yeah.
I realize, we do have, it's not a, transportation facility, but we bought land near Cromwell for a transit operations, facility to put the buses and maintain them in. So that the county did purchase that land last year, and we're trying to get funding to build the facility. Sorry.
Right?
Yes.
But the 648 is a state road, right? So wouldn't that be a state improvement?
Yeah, it would be, but the county has been spending money, trying to, most of the county problems are on state roads, or the bigger roads that are heavily traveled. And so when the state doesn't have the money to address these things, then the county's been trying to, put some skin in the game and get them, just like we try to get grants to leverage money and get more out of the money we spend, we try to flip it on the state and say, hey, well, the county put some money in, so you'll get a bigger improvement if you put the project in our area instead of some other area. And so, there is, speaking of the sidewalk on, 648 there from, I don't know exactly where it ends, close to North County, up to Burwood, where that missing section of the sidewalk is. The state is doing a feasibility study, and the county has set aside some money to be a local match. We've been partnering on a lot of sidewalk projects with the state, the ones we talked about to Arundel Mills, those shared use paths to Arundel Mills from the trail. We're providing the local match. We provide 20% and the state provides federal funding for like 80%, or other state money. And so there is a feasibility study that's due around March, is what the state, I heard latest from the state. So again, and then hopefully we can move that into design, and, we've got that request for a while now. So we're trying to work together with the state to get the sidewalk put in on 648. We also had a request, it's not funded, but it's kind of in our planning list for, is that 170 that goes through, I don't know if it's Camp Mead or wherever goes through Linthicum, kind of there by the school and all that.
Andover.
Well, the one that goes by the school, Linthicum Elementary School.
It can't be.
No, it's like 170 can't meet.
Yeah, okay. So, we've got a request to kind of look at, improving the pedestrian, facilities on that roadway to make it more friendly, slow traffic down and that. So we haven't funded that yet, but we're looking into that. More of a streetscape project, I guess.
So on Andover Road, you said about the site distance project, is that, one of the ones that's sort of in construction now with, storm drain and that kind of stuff, chopping down all the trees?
If that's, the chop down trees, trying to make sight distance better for the driveways, so people will see people coming in and out, and so that's what's going on right now. Yeah, it should be in construction. And there's a larger improvement that just costs more money that we haven't started, that would kind of address some of the sidewalks on Andover that aren't there. But that's not fun.
I'm curious, do you find that, there is a high percentage of accidents close to the airport in connection with people trying to get to the airport?
And that leads me to something we can send out. We do have a Vision Zero dashboard now that you can go look and see where crashes are. A lot of North County has more crashes just because there are more cars and more people. I don't know that we specifically related it to in and out of the airport. That's something that we can look at. We have identified kind of high crash areas. And then even the previous master plan that was older, it's adopted in 2018, kind of looked at the same thing. So as the crashes update, our areas of concern update, but, so North County in general is a safety issue, just because of a lot of interaction between, cars and density and.
Yeah.
Not a lot of walking facilities, a lot of reasons there's crashes, yeah.
I'll get to it in a little bit with our presentation, but there is, this area in particular, is probably qualified in most instances for community enhancement grant programs from the airport, some funding, but they are largely provided to communities and so forth to enhance like sidewalk improvements, signage improvements, things like that, small improvements. But, they would, they'd be dedicated to their specific community as long as they're in that community enhancement zone. We'll go over that on the slides. So maybe there's some funding opportunities for small scale projects.
Hi, this is Tanya. I put the link to the Vision Zero dashboard into the chat if anybody's interested, or if you wanted to show it now. I don't know.
Maybe we'll give you an idea, a flavor of it, and you can go play around. So, Tanya, you can walk through it, Tanya, or?
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah, but I,
There's a lot going on. If you
Yeah.
click on data dash, if you click on data
Did you-
dash.
click on it. Wait, I don't see it. That's the problem.
Okay, never mind, I got it. So
Sam
you
shared
click
the
on, you click on data dashboard, there's crash data. And you can zoom in, you can only zoom in so far, because again, we're not trying to show you exactly
Wow.
the locations, but you can see the
Wow.
locations as you go in of crashes. This has been recently updated.
Um,
19 to 2023. Go ahead, Tanya.
Brian, so we had been operating under the old way of operating, which was the state didn't want to show exact locations for privacy reasons, but we've learned that now the SHA is no longer as involved in the data, so it's more like just the Maryland State Police, and they have said that they're okay. So we will probably be revising that actually to actually pinpoint locations in the future. But for now, it doesn't show them if you zoom in.
And you can filter between injury and fatal crashes. I believe you can filter by mode as well. It's on this.
You can.
Yep, bike and ped. So you can go to specific intersections and see how it compares to other intersections. And then there's an equity tab, there's a high injury network that there's some software that picks up, relative to the amount of traffic and similar other facilities, where are some high injury networks.
Well, and to be clear, the high injury networks that are shown in this tab are only county owned roads and maintained. Nestor Flores, whose group spearheaded this effort, they only have control over the county roads, so they only wanted to show what they could control. However, if you go to the other crash tabs, you'll see all the roads involved, except for interstates.
So we'll send this out to you all and take some time and explore it. Okay, so any other projects or studies within this area that you all think should be mentioned then in this region plan, explored?
We do also have longer we'll sit here, I'll probably come up with more, but there's a noise wall that the state has gotten funding for. The state legislature, I guess, given a grant to the county for the past couple of years to look at putting a noise wall near 295, one of those communities, near 295, the old communities that didn't have a noise wall, somewhere near that interchange. I don't know exactly where.
I'm thinking Aviation Boulevard between Dorsey and Andover. That area, a lot of people, a lot of exercise enthusiasts who, like me, sometimes get off work late, they'll walk that area. Like a trail kind of, it's a part of the trail, but it's not. People walk it. But the lighting is really minimal over there.
Is that for the spur?
Yeah, is it along Aviation?
Yeah, the one that goes along the park there. Sawmill.
No,
Okay.
not,
The other side.
it's. I think with Landmark, yeah, right over.
Oh, yeah.
Down, like, yeah, right around there,
We should look.
towards Dorsey, the Hammond House.
So,
This is, the lighting is low.
so generally the county, and I'm not speaking for Rec and Parks, but I'll try to carry their message. We brought it up too, because we're interested in these trails for transportation purposes to get people to move. Of course, their focus is for recreation. So a lot of people can use the trails to get around. But there is not lighting, especially late at night or early in the morning. But the Rec and Parks policy is it's not lit because it's open from dusk to
Right,
dawn.
yeah,
So they're not gonna police or maintain the trail at night. So therefore they discourage people using it at night, so that's not lit. So, but that is an issue that a lot of people have said and brought up, and it would kind of just take a policy change and to get more money to go then go back and light all of it, or at least certain key sections, and then, of course, you need more policing of those areas, you know,
Right.
during the night. So that's something we've heard from not just this area and other people, but currently that's not the way it works.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the one thing, totally.
Well, the Olympic Elementary, you said saves routes to school study. Is that published somewhere or someplace we can get a link to it?
Yeah, so, and,
Do you want to go 2 slides?
Yeah.
just,
Well, that's fine.
yeah, so we had last fall, Tanya, we had public meetings for each one of the schools online where people could comment. We posted the draft reports, got public comment, and then posted the final studies. And typically how it works is while it's under design or whatever, DPW is the one that carries out these projects, they project manage it. And so they have it on their website, and then Tanya just went to look for it right before, and it's down. So you typically, once the study is complete, then we'll move it over to ours to show like completed studies, our webpage. So they took it off before they told us they were going to. So we'll put it on, it'll be in there in the next week or so, we'll put it up. But we can send you a link to the studies. The link is probably still live, it's just not active on the DPW website. But we can share that, the results of the Olympic study for sure. And it's just a series of recommendations, and again, it takes money to implement that.
We do plan to hopefully take a look at all of these that we did and start formulating some grant requests for this round of Safe Routes to School for implementation of some of the low-hanging fruit, the short-term projects maybe.
And Safe Routes is a federal program, and it was previously limited to, was it just elementary or elementary middle?
It was just elementary, and it's been now it's K through 12.
Anyway, so we have a phase 2 of the study. So the first phase looked at 17 schools throughout the county, and you can see them spread out geographically. We got additional funding to do 10 more elementary schools and 10 middle schools. Is that right, Tanya?
Yes,
Yeah. So we'll be starting that maybe this fall.
yes.
And so there aren't that many middle schools in the county, especially ones that people can walk to. So they'll probably, Lindale will be picked up at least.
Offhand, do you know of any locations that impact BGE corridors where you know the potential trail or walk?
Not off the top of my head, but it is something we've talked about generally, is that, you know, those are some preserved corridors in some situations. In some situations, it's very vertically difficult, but when there is a big open corridor like that and the county is developed, we have an interest in partnering with BG&E to develop some of that. There's, you know, they've got to make sure to keep them separated, you know, maintenance traffic from the people. But they have worked with other people in other areas, so it's not something.
I was going to add that recently BG&E just came out with some new guidelines actually that are relatively prohibitive on types of materials that you can use. And so there's a lot of chatter among my community and at the MPO level about how we can work with BG&E to make sure we're all getting what we need.
Yeah, I mean, because I live near, Cabot John, just that's a spot that I thought about would be a nice,
And that is, Tanya, is that in our
I saw
walk
it
and
in
roll
the
plan?
briefing papers, yeah.
Yeah.
Is what in our walk and roll plan?
Ca- Cabot John,
What-
the Parks and Rec area, that's also got, it's got, power lines on it as well. It's over in,
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look.
I think it was proposed in our walk and roll plan. We'll look at it and we can share it with you.
I saw them out.
Okay.
But I would encourage you guys to, advocate to BG&E for a good partnership with making use of their easements. I know they have a lot of liability concerns, but it's been done elsewhere, so hopefully we can make it work.
Okay. So going back a couple slides, again, we want to keep touching on transit-oriented development, TOD. So looking at the Linthicum Light Rail, again, mostly surrounded by the residential neighborhood. We've talked about the safety concerns that folks have around the station, and whether there is this opportunity to really enhance the station, create a little more pride in it, and make it a little bit safer, and how to do that. So going to the next slide, again, drawn from the study, the TOD study. Here is one of the concepts, or the concept, did I just come up with one
Yeah,
concept?
it's just a potential concept to.
Right, to help visualize what, if again, you all were looking at, maybe potentially changing the zoning if needed. But what a redesign could look like for this area, where you're sort of orienting then, some of the parking towards the rear of these properties, or in between the commercial buildings and the railroad station, or behind some of the buildings, so that you're bringing the buildings closer to the street and create more of a pedestrian type of environment, rather than it sort of feeling like it's an auto-dominated environment. If you can imagine, you've got your grocery stores and the stores in the back, but you've got to walk through the sea of parking. You don't feel so safe as a pedestrian. So this concept really brings those buildings closer to the street, parking in the rear. And then, again, I think it's a townhome, or it's a single family, attached, or townhomes there, towards the south.
And I think this was done to not change zoning, but to work with what is existing in this particular case. Because again, a lot of these residential areas have the residents. So in a lot of TOD's areas, there's no residential, and we're trying to bring residential in. In these areas, the residential is already there. So what amenities can we bring to the residential area? And again, increase the activity and safety for the people that live there. It's kind of a flip on some of the normal TOD development.
There's that concept is when you activate a space, you get more eyes on the area, and hopefully that could be a decrease in crime then. Any reactions to this concept, or the idea of TOD at the Linthicum Light Rail Station?
I know that you said, that there's already residential-ish in that area, and I agree. So revitalization of the area, making it more inviting and less likely to have criminal activity, seems like something that would be a focus.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone over there multiple times, to visit the, I guess, Carmelo's and I guess the other shops, the sushi place. There's a rope over there, but I think I went there one time and never again. Right. There's no gas, you can't actually fill up your gas there. And yeah, it's,
There's a gas station there.
Yeah, next door.
yeah, at the rope, you can't fill it at the rope. Yeah. I think that, definitely it could use revitalization. I think that some of the businesses there are very nice. I would hope they could be preserved in this, vision. And they've been there for a long time. But some of them, there's definitely some empty spaces there. So I think that, revitalizing the area, and the civic plaza, I guess, creating like an open space where, there could be community events would be, I think, really, something that could be, positive for the area. I think that, right now, I think they have some kind of gatherings at the Veterans Plaza occasionally, in that area, but, nothing really, there's not really spaces.
Well, we have the Benton Avenue Park, and we have concerts in the park from June through August, so I mean, I live there in Lincoln. I'm there probably every day as far as feeling unsafe. I can't say that I do. There's many more places I feel less safe than out there. Can the shopping center be updated? Certainly. It was built in the 40s and the 50s, parts of it, because it was built multiple times. As far as bringing 1 to 3 stories in, I'm gonna tell you right now, you're gonna have a fight on your hands with LSIA.
Go on with, well, in what sense?
We've already talked about that road and traffic and the speeds and everything else. And we've asked for, we know we can't get speed bumps on that road, but we've asked for flashing signs at the school like they have over at the North Glen that show that you're going too fast because they come up the hill like it's a racetrack. Then we have to cross the light rail down there. The bars at the light rail are constantly not working properly, and so we have people running around them. And I'm talking about the light rail crossing, plus you have the light rail station that's down there. It's in a gully, it's hidden. That's one of the things the community thinks is a real safety hazard. They have lit it up a little bit, but there's no parking there. So if you're talking about putting parking behind more commercial development to, you're just asking for more people to come in and park there, not use the commercial development, but to get to the light rail. There's already a problem with people coming in and parking on the residential streets, particularly during the downtown stadium games and concerts, et cetera, that's caused problems in the community. LSIA has gotten wind of some of this, and like I said, their board has already talked about they're gonna be opposed to it, so I'm gonna say. As far as revitalization of what we have on a much smaller scale, fine, but tripling it by going up 3 stories, no way.
I always found that light rail station to be kind of odd because you have North Lithicum is right there. I mean, what's the distance? A half mile, 3/4
Maybe
mile?
that's what we've been saying for years, ever since it went in.
And it's
We
not-
have the North Lithicum station with parking and stuff. Why is there a station there?
And the thing is, we talked about earlier, why don't you use public transportation? Like, I definitely am not using that station because I don't want to get a ticket. I can't park at the Royal Farms and I can't park across the street. So I see they have the hotel pickup, like the shuttle pickup right there at the Royal Farms, but you could accomplish that right across the street from the hotels at the North Lithicum station. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what, one of the things LSIA asked for was that, take them down, drop them off at North Lithicum. And it was like, well, it's too much farther. And it's like, we clocked it out. It might be an extra 2 miles to drive the shuttle vans, and that depends on which, hotel you're coming from. So they compromised and took the shuttle or the drop off right across the road from it. And again, you've got the traffic. If there happen to be going north on Camp Mead and they pull over and drop off there, then the people with, some of them with suitcases and stuff that are trying to use it are having to cross a road where they drive like maniacs. You've got a firehouse that sits right there. I'm not gonna say the fire department's maniacs, but when you're coming out Benton Avenue, you've got Camp Mead here, and you've got the bar stop that you're supposed to stop at here. Well, you're not seeing what's happening on Camp Mead if you're stopped where the bar stop is, because it's impossible to see. You have to pull all the way up and almost pull out the way the sight distance are. And, it's just a nasty section of road to think about increasing it by a factor of 3, and that's what you're doing with going from 1 story to 3.
So is it because I'm trying to think if there are ways to sort of mitigate some of what the actual issues are. It's not necessarily the density, it's the traffic that is anticipated from that density, right? And if we're anticipating that individuals that sort of live in a TOD probably gonna own, we anticipate that they own less than 2 cars. Because if you're subscribing to that lifestyle of living at a TOD, then you may not need that vehicle because you're using that public transit to get to your destinations.
Well,
So is it mostly a transportation issue and parking and speeding and road?
well,
condition
that's
issue?
part of it. The other thing is, we fought for over a century to be small town Linthicum and be family oriented, and that is not.
Before I forget one thing, the state just recently passed enabling legislation to do speed cameras in front of schools, school zones. So, the county is in the process of, again, not speaking for them, the police department and DPW are working on, getting, radar and ticketing enforcement, so, you know, this might be a place where they can do it, and it actually applies to residential areas as well, so. So the county is working on addressing some of the speeding issues in areas like this.
Well, so you mentioned that, and I was just speaking with one of our guests that was here before the meeting started. And if you drive Maple Road right now, before the weather wears it off, there's at least 3 spots on Maple between B&A and Hammond's Ferry where somebody has decided to do the burnout routine and put all the marks all over the road. So I mean, it's leaving the beltways and the major and the state roads, not that that part of Maple isn't a state road, but it's going into the residential areas. It's the drivers since COVID have lost their minds. I mean, when I get seriously, I have a condo down Ocean City, and if you spend any time down there, you'll say everybody checks their brain at the Bay Bridge, because once they hit Ocean City, it's nuts, particularly in the summer. Well, I'm beginning to find that it's creeping out and going into the neighborhoods too. Maybe I'm just getting older and grayer, but I mean, I'm not one that puts along in, you know, 55 zone at 40 miles an hour either. I'm probably exceeding the speed limit a little bit. Not 80, but.
No, there's some data to support what you said, you know, during COVID, the overall traffic volumes decreased because people were driving less, but some of the fatalities increased because of interaction and, like I said, just, you know, more people driving.
People driving faster.
Yeah, less safely. So it's come back down a little bit, but there is data to support what you're saying.
Yeah, and we've noticed, and I live close enough to the Beltway that I can hear the traffic at night, and they're racing out there on the Beltway. I mean, we didn't used to hear that type of stuff. It's just like some of the major roads, particularly in the off hours, are becoming racetracks for people.
Okay, so let's move on to Brooklyn Park and the Curtis Bay area, and then we'll finish up with BWI Airport and their plans. So again, what we've heard from the community, I'm gonna jump to the second bullet, is really the safety and walkability of the major spine there of Ritchie Highway, and how dangerous it is. If you're a pedestrian, there aren't great ways to cross the street. We know that there's a lot of people who speed along that route, so we understand that that is one of the biggest issues here in the Brooklyn Park area. Also the opportunity for streetscape improvements, how to revitalize the area, make it a little more appealing. And in one of our previous discussions, I think it was actually at the Chesapeake Arts Center, that meeting where we talked about pursuing an arts district for a portion of the Brooklyn Park area as well. So again, I'm only touching on a few issues, but again, what have been your concerns in the Brooklyn Park and Curtis Bay area?
So I see that there is a Maryland to accessibility study design rather that's happening. Can you tell me about that?
So when we get to you'll see it. We did a study for Brooklyn Park.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And we did a study, a neighborhood, you know, kind of all of Brooklyn Park, looking at all the various issues. We did a walk on it of Route 2, and we met with various community groups and tried to really get in the weeds a little bit of specific improvements. And so there was, again, the study was complete. There was a series of recommendations. One of the major recommendations was kind of this Ritchie Highway, visioning and reimagining of Ritchie Highway. And even though I think it's only 2 lanes in each direction there is a lot of truck traffic. They're going very fast. Another place where they're going fast. Basically, every road is cut through because you're not going to the road, but, going through Brooklyn Park that maybe not going to Brooklyn Park. And so, we did the study. There's a series of recommendations, and we proposed a capital project to start building, some of those recommendations. The first highest priority, of course, is Ritchie Highway. The state, and I don't know if Tavon, is prepared to talk about it. The state is looking at some of this for, there's some retrofit for ADA compliance on sidewalks. So they're looking at doing some work there on Ritchie Highway as well. And so we're hoping maybe to partner with them to not only just do maintenance work and fix some of the ADA issues, but maybe kind of use combined funds again and figure out a way to, improve that corridor and make it more pedestrian friendly and make it more of a corridor, a community center instead of kind of a road that a lot of people are going through. Another project the state is working on, I believe around Walton Avenue down to, Ordnance Road, there's this, there's a lot of people that walk down there, and if you've ever seen it, gone to the NBA or whatever, you'll see people walking underneath those bridges in the median, and then they get to the other side, they're kind of stuck, and they gotta cross the road somewhere. So there is a sidewalk project the state's working on, it's in design now, I don't know exactly where it was, they did a feasibility study, similar to the feasibility studies getting ready to come out for North County High School, they did a feasibility study. And so they're in design now for the sidewalk, and it's programmed to be constructed, but anyway.
Is that by the Beltway?
Yeah, like underneath.
Yeah, so like
Right.
La Quinta Inn,
Yes.
down towards,
Yep.
what is that, where the Guitar Center and the bank are?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, cause from that whole section from basically reaching the MBA up to Hammond's Lane,
Yep.
right? So you have the, Holy Cross Cemetery on the left. There's, this is like by Arundel Gardens. There's been pedestrians hit there. There's nowhere to walk. It's a steep hill.
Yep.
It's extremely dangerous. And then there's just nowhere to walk. But you're right there. You don't, it's not exactly the place you want to walk. It's the on-ramp to the Beltway.
Right.
They're doing 70, hitting that. But if there was a safe way to commute it down, you know what I mean?
Right, it's people that have to go down there that that can't get in cars.
Right.
And that's
They're
every day coming out
And it
of
is
Brooklyn
every day.
Park. I see people from my community for years, the same people walking to work.
Yeah.
And they're definitely coming out to where I call it the Shell Silverstone, the sidewalk ends, where the sidewalk ends. And then you just have to go into the center and,
Because that's big and wide, and
right,
the only place to walk.
Yeah.
and then the trash and things are left there, the trees are broken. And then they pop back over to either side, the NBA or the Giant side,
You
so.
gotta tell them about the Brooklyn Park mobility thing. They can call and schedule right.
Yep, it's called, there is
They can move 2 hours.
where you can take the bus, or there's a calling ride zone too, so.
Yeah, every day.
But we're working on making it safer to walk as well, so. And so there is a draft project in the draft, budget capital budget that we, provided to the planning advisory board that funds the improvements. So if that's something you guys are interested in, you could advocate for that project to be funded.
What about the developer over at, the Cedar Hill side? Has the county, I don't want to say solicited, but had an interest in partnering with that developer in terms of an exchange? Maybe widening for a sidewalk or just thinking about maybe the developer can help a little bit with that when they have their requirements.
Which area?
You're talking about the Cedar Hill.
Cedar Hill.
new home development.
Oh, the new home.
Yeah, because I'm sure they have turning requirements, they have traffic requirements that they have construction requirements that they have to, where they would have to comply with the increased amount of traffic in that area.
So we're not involved in development review, but part of the issue is the cemeteries on both sides.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And across the street.
can't just move those.
Yeah.
Well, closer towards 695, towards, let's just say.
To go on the
Denny's.
east side, right?
Where there's no sidewalk and people are walking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wouldn't their feasibility studies have already been completed? They're in the construction phase?
Yeah, so we're gonna be doing that section. The state is, the state is doing that. And actually, they're not, typically don't have money and they ask for, or the county steps up to help out. But the state is picking up the tab on this one because it is so important.
we can look at their site plan to see what they were proposing, what, bike ped facilities they were proposing in what areas.
They do have a shared use path that goes up to the circle, the new circle they put in, and I don't know where it goes from there, but, or what happens, but.
And did you say that, there is somewhere we can view the design plans or, for the Route 2 connection into Glen Burnie?
There's a feasibility study, I believe that's online, if not, I can send it to you or we'll post it, but I haven't seen the actual, like, so that's like a concept study.
Okay.
That you kind of look at, get a cost estimate and say, oh yeah, this is a viable project, and then moves into design. The design has not come out yet, but that feasibility study is available. I believe it's online. If it's not, we can.
So there is no design at this point.
It's in design. They're actively
Got
designing.
you. I got you. Thank you for that.
I don't know if you're able to answer this, the safe routes to school, so a lot of elementary schools.
Yeah,
Are there plans to do additional studies? Brooklyn Park Middle School is a, kind of interesting, that a lot of children are crossing Ritchie Highway, there are crossing guards there. There's also gonna be the community center, right, that's getting built on the other side of Ritchie Highway.
yeah.
And you want children to go over there and use it, but if you've ever been around Brooklyn Park Middle School at dismissal, it's like opening up an anthill and just watching them just go every direction, including through the industrial park. So right there at the former Shoppers, Lidl, is that a Walgreens? Is Walgreens not a CVS? The Walgreens, that shopping center, the Brooklyn Park Shopping Center, I think is what it's called. They traverse through that, they go behind that building, they go across and through all the commercial districts. I don't know if there's a way, like, if that's a planned study, because.
So that's the additional studies that you said.
That was another component of the recommendations,
Go back
that
to-
ability study, and you're exactly right, that's exactly what we thought as well. Was, with the new teen center and with seeing the dismissal at time,
Yeah.
it's gonna be an attraction to
With
at
the
least
ball
a
field,
large
that's the
portion of those people to go that way. And so, that, they might be crossing in two locations, and there are, so the safe routes did do Brooklyn Park Elementary School, and again, like you said, the middle school will probably be able to be picked up by this next study, but we're hoping to use this funding to actually do design on that connection between the teen center and the middle school.
Gotcha.
And not have to study it first, I guess.
Yeah, that makes
Okay,
Brian.
yeah,
We actually have already, remember, applied for funding from the Transportation Land Use Connections Program with the Baltimore Metropolitan Council to study this connection. We've heard from a lot of, this isn't the first time I've heard for that request. So yeah, we want to connect the two safely.
and there's other connections, that were recommended in the mobility study for the middle school, right? Like back to the neighborhoods.
Yes, yeah, and that was also part of the grant application request.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. They had the there's a big development improvement within along the rear of Brooklyn Park Middle School. They're like all the fields and everything, they're all new.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a path that the kids that live in Harbor Valley would use to walk to school. And they closed off the path from Harbor Valley is in the rear. That runs along 10th and Bell Road. But the kids will walk from the community to school when they close that path up.
Oh, the school system or who?
No, I guess they approved it. Whoever did the developing.
Oh.
Just like a real path, or was it like
It was a
just
real,
a path that we used?
well, it was a real paved path from the community and it opened up to the track. And so
Mhm.
they would walk up the track to the school, but now they relocated the track, so they closed off the path. So they no longer have that shortcut, and if they walk, now they have to
Oh,
leave out of the community and walk up 10th and then go the long way.
that's awful.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. So the HOA, I'm a member of the HOA, so we were talking about that as well.
Well, if you want to reach out to us, we can figure out how to use the funding to,
Oh, okay. Just had a meeting too, so that's can find it out. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would be curious to know what the reasoning was for closing it and where it came from. Sometimes, I don't know, was it an age restricted community that was put in or?
No,
Okay,
no. This was all, the development was for just the improvement of the recreational areas associated with the school. So the track and field, all that, and so that, you know.
and it precipitated closing off that access. Okay.
Correct.
Hmm. Unfortunate.
Okay. So again, any other additional projects or studies that we haven't heard about that you all think should be considered?
When streetscaping is, done, that's done by that department as well? Like for the Brooklyn Park area, as far as the.
it would be us or the state, Vanilla Road, or combined.
And then in addition, I know we have concerns in the Brooklyn Park area. We love the art center. We enjoy that the middle school is walkable right there. The senior center is right there. The living is right down the street. The Amarillo County, office is right there. Now, we're just concerned with the amount of parking that's backing into our neighborhoods and the waiting and idling that's going on since the new apartments have been put into that area. It's caused, we've had signs put up immediately since that situation has happened. And so we're just concerned with when the ballpark takes off and the use of the field in addition to the area growing, where are those people gonna park? Where are they gonna pick up the kids? Where are they going to, begin to overflow to, when the neighborhood that is near that are single family homes that need to park their cars and things like that. So we do have some concern, in that area for that.
And even if we don't have answers tonight,
No, you,
right, we're adding this to our list of recommendations and strategies, so.
because we're talking about now Hammond Lane, that's one,
Yeah.
going down into that next corridor.
Yeah, sure.
So, just a little earworm.
Okay.
When you talk about improving the interest in using transit,
Hmm.
when we go down the hill towards, Glen Burnie and the Giant, they all have covered and seats. You know, they have the covered, areas for
Oh,
folks who are waiting
shelters.
for transit,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
In Brooklyn Park, we have, shopping carts.
Yeah.
That's what people use because they have nothing to sit on. And
I
if the
saw
weather-
that.
They're gonna have to stand out. They don't have anything, any coverage. I don't use transit, but I mean that,
For sure.
as I drive by,
I
it's
saw
something I know, yeah.
And that's, I mean, there's. a
That's
number
in
of-
our study, actually. Yeah, we have a picture of that.
Yeah, there's a number of locations where you like sit, the shopping cart is just pushed over the side, and dry seating.
Which then causes issues for the shopping centers missing their shopping cart.
So we've done some shelters upgrades in the county, and we're working our way through the county again as we get more funding.
Yeah, is that it? I'm like, Ritchie Highway, is that a county thing for those shelters or is that a state?
So, we've been trying to do shelters at county, bus stops, but it's not only. So the state has different criteria for their bus stops. They have a much higher criteria, again, because you're competing with the whole Baltimore region. And there's a lot of stops that have a lot more ridership in other areas, like closer to the city and other areas. So they have like a threshold of like 100 trips a day or something before they'll put a shelter in.
Oh,
And a lot of the stops in Amarillo County just don't get that. So,
gotcha.
well, we have the list and identified, and so we're trying to also do those too, is use funding and make funding for both stops. So there's a lot of stops in Brooklyn Park that are now served both by the county route and the state route. So again, where they're served by multiple services, we're also trying to prioritize those because obviously that helps people more.
And I'm sorry, I have one more question as well, maybe one. what is there, and, let me know if this has been spoke on or, addressed in the past, but what is the issue with us not having trash cans on, like, the streets? For pedestrians to throw their trash away? 'Cause I don't really see-
Just regular trash cans anywhere?
Or like metal ones that.
I mean,
whatever
at
situation.
bus stops or just on the street?
Correct, like on walking on the sidewalks, like, where on the bus stops, where you would see them.
So I know the MTA traditionally doesn't dump trash, so they haven't put trash cans, hoping that, people won't, if you put a trash can, then they're gonna use it, and then nobody's dumping it, so.
Right.
And again, the county's pretty new, we're trying to put trash cans in with our new shelters, again, we just put in 5,
Right.
that's countywide, and that costs somewhere in the order of $20,000 each, just between all the engineering and design and concrete and all that, so it's expensive to put the shelters in, but, so we're working on that. But just regular trash cans as you walk, that would be like a streetscape improvement. We'd probably look into sometimes, shopping centers and stuff, they'll include that in their maintenance, if they have other stuff,
Right.
they'll do their frontage or something like that, or depending on the business or their community. But that's originally probably where we'd be looking at it first, until we get a big enough budget to do that more regularly. So we were trying to get a contract to do trash pickup and maintenance, and a lot of other things. And it was over 100,000, just to get people to come once a month to dump trash at all the trash cans. And we only have, I don't remember the exact numbers. We have like 300 and some stops, and there may be like 25 trash cans. So, we put them everywhere. It's gonna be really expensive really quickly. Ultimately should be, but maybe there's a way we can partner with, organizations to share resources and make that part of their community funding.
Can I jump in and say, bless their hearts, some of the transit planners have been emptying the trash cans
They have.
Oh, they're not.
Wow. I appreciate
so
it.
that we could have them there.
Well, why don't you, ask your colleagues over in the, waste management, to.
You would think that, the county each county agency would work nicely with each other, but it doesn't always happen.
Is there a way to part with community organizations as far as like,
Like adopt a road or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we're hoping for.
Right.
Sponsorship opportunities on the
Right.
shelters.
like in your own community, on the end of your street or whatever it is,
Right.
where you're meet out to the main road, something kind of adopted area.
I saw Tavon had his hand raised, and Tanya, I'm not sure if you still do too.
Oh, I just
Yeah.
want, yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say that, Brian, he did a great job at running off those projects that's in the Brooklyn Park area. The state has a lot of projects that's spread out all over the county. As far as the Brooklyn Park area, it is a very important neighborhood given its, location to Baltimore City. So I'll be more than happy to dig into some of those projects in that area specifically and get back to the group with some of the details if that's okay.
Thank you.
I've got a long list too of things that I'm gonna follow up with you all with some links and studies, so happy to, Tavon, to get that from you and then share it with the group.
Yes.
Okay, anything y'all want to discuss further for the Brooklyn Park, Curtis Bay area? We didn't really touch too much on Curtis Bay at all, but I think in previous discussions, when we were talking about the redevelopment sites, we did actually talk about, well, is that road network really able to support maybe some future residential or commercial development in that area? So again, you see that we sort of do touch on transportation and housing in all these meetings. So with that, I'll pass it over to Sean, and he can provide an overview of DWI Airport. So if you want to switch over to the other slide deck.
Okay, great, thank you. And, welcome to everybody. I hope the slides are informative and the discussion is valuable to you. And of course, the board, our committee, please ask any questions as we proceed through. And of course, in the back, if anyone has any questions as we get to the end, we open the floor. So BWI International Third Marshall Airport, trying to stay within the spirit of our discussion on transportation wholly, but of course, some facts about us first before we progress to some of those things and our plans in general. The airport owns approximately 3,800 acres of property, most of which is confined to the ring roadway around the airport, aviation, Dorset Boulevard. But then there are a number of outlying parcels as well that we own, and largely because we bought them over the years to protect those particular properties from noise abatement, concerns of incompatible land uses around the airport to protect from those encroachments on the area. Within the terminal area, we operate roughly 2 million plus square feet of terminal building in our campus area, and that's always a challenge. One of the biggest challenges for us to find enough building to support all those that are here as passengers at the airport as they continue to have heightened demands to grow our facility, and that is the place that we kind of burst at the seams from quickly. Runway wise, you can see there's 3 bold black lines, one much smaller than the other two. The 2 larger ones that are bolder in the middle that intersect, those are our commercial service runways, runway 1028, 1533, and then we have another 1533 to the east, which is our, what we call it, a general aviation runway. It's a smaller runway used by smaller aircraft, general aviation, or corporate aircraft that fly in and out of that one on the east-hand side. You can turn, next slide, please. Who serves BWI? Really just about anybody. I mean, you may not think that when you come here. You always think Southwest. This is where you're going to catch flights for Southwest, but every carrier that generally operates in the country, with the exception of, large international carriers, most domestics, do operate from here at our airport. And we have a lot of smaller operators that are here, that you might not have heard of too much before, the Bellows of the world, or the Contours and so forth, which offer some unique services. But of course, our big gorilla is always Southwest and has been since about 1998. They moved here in 93 and 98. They really kind of blossomed as US Airways kind of backed out. And at this point in time, it's kind of hard to see that number down there, but that does say that the operation of that circle there, that's all purple, 71.5% of it being Southwest. Our fastest growing carrier right now is Frontier, believe it or not. They have some pretty good plans to grow here. They actually just shared some of that information with us today. So we're going to take that back and see if we can account for that for the growth in the future. Next slide, please. We are really, you think of the 3 airports in the region. You have Dulles, we think of international service primarily for the Washington, Baltimore region, and for the corporate passenger or traveler, or the business government traveler, you think of Dulles, National, Reagan, and for us, we are the lower, not low anymore, but lower cost airport with respect to domestic service operations primarily. We do have some overseas travel, and then a lot of that down to the south now in South America, Central America, and Caribbean, of course, destinations. But we don't serve too much overseas. Most of it would be to Europe from here. England and Germany and Iceland are our primary departure points, but 85 nonstop destinations. You really can't get anywhere in the world from here if you're willing to connect, but nonstop, there's 85 good solid locations, and again, most of them domestically here. Go ahead. So what do we do with BWI as far as how we, promote it? There's positives, there's negatives. We all know, you can't say there's no negative without positive or positive without negative. So some of the positive value that the airport brings to the state is certainly relevant to the economic impact that's generated, all the jobs that are, provided in the community, not just by us, but those who operate out of our airport, and then those travelers in the area that spend their money in return as they're passing through the area on the community, and some jobs even support those folks. So you can see that in general, this was just collected last fiscal year, which ends in July. So this is fairly current number after COVID. Thankfully, we got some good updated numbers. Took us a while to get to this, but 11.3 billion overall economic impact. And then you can also see that at the same time, it's 107,000 jobs total, 5.6 billion in earnings, and 782.5 million in local taxes. If you look on the middle part of the left-hand slide, you'll see that there's airport generated and visitor generated. There's a good split between the two as to, again, those who are here doing business because of the existence of the airport, and those that operate because the airport is around, but people use them as, they use the airport, they're spending extra money outside of the airport. That jobs would probably continue to exist if it weren't for the airport, but those upper level jobs there, the airport generated, largely the airport's presence, is what drives the existence of those businesses and that money that comes in. So pretty cool stuff. And on the right-hand side, you can see the activity of the money that comes in through the airport. It's kind of split out. The money that goes to the businesses devoted directly to the airports, it comes down and goes on the left-hand side, the payroll, Southwest, people who work for BWI, Amazon. We use our money, we spend our money, direct jobs, goes back into personal income spent in the community. And then the people who pass through on the right-hand side do the same thing. They come in, they make their purchases. There's other jobs that are responsible to support them. The hotels, all the hotels around here, obviously, they wouldn't all be here if BWI weren't here. There'll be some, because there's a good business district here, but certainly not as many. So a lot of those folks have jobs and they contribute to this factor as well. So speaking of job creation, it's not every day we can say that this occurs, but it did occur a few years back now when Amazon approached us and they wanted to construct here. We happen to have plans for about 20 years to provide cargo development in the site where they did lay ground and build this 200,000 square foot facility. It had been planned out in the 90s. It had been sat idle forever. When they approached us, thankfully, we were able to take an opportunity to expand upon planning that existed and was on file with the FAA for years and build it rather quickly because, of course, they were flipping the bill. But, it's not every day you can turn on, over a 2-year period, 1,500 new jobs to an area which, they really do operate in and out of their own 3 shifts. So that was transportation wise kind of a challenge for us at first to figure out how we're going to manage some of that. Some of the folks who come and go from that particular area and transit challenges and shift work and so forth. So we worked that out, thankfully. And so those are some of the challenges that we deal with oftentimes. But this was a great success story. And there's a couple more coming too that we'll talk about, but we're going to get to something that, of course, has touched upon a couple of times and really leads to, go ahead and advance your slides, leads into the overall zoning that the county is doing as well. We kind of have a role in that in our actual existence in the community. And we try to do our best to make sure that what they do and what's proposed at the county level, we actually review their permits that come through that are in a certain radius of our airport, so we can try to make sure things are consistent. And I know the county always adopts their, zoning and land use as appropriate to match up with what we call our airport noise zone at the appropriate times. So this actually goes back a long ways, and quite frankly, it's largely voluntary. We're not mandated by anybody to do noise zoning planning, but we're certainly expected to give, good attention to it, but the airport chose a long time ago to actually adopt these airport noise zone rules and to take advantage of that, to do the better for the community as best we could with respect to protections. So back in 1974, there was an act that actually suggested that would provide a positive basis for abatement to actually try to eliminate and mitigate best possible existing noise problems in communities. And that stands to this day. There's contours that we're going to see on the next page, which I spoke to a little bit earlier. It's the airport noise zone. And it's specific to boundaries over geographic areas that kind of identify the noise levels that are average over a day and night level around the area. And they prescribe numbers to them. They're decibel readings. They're 65, they're 70, and they're 75. And that doesn't mean that when you go outside and you listen and there's a plane that goes over top of you, that it's 65, 70, or 75. They're actually a lot louder than that. But there's also many other times of the day that you don't hear anything. So that's why it is a 365-day average, day, night. But there are penalties applied to nighttime activity. And we average all this out over the course of a year. We forecast out as well. You can see on the right-hand side, the inputs to that is we have plan development, existing conditions, and the operations that we feed into the model that kind of put these contours together are the number of operations, the type of aircraft that are expected and even forecast to operate here, and the day and night split utilization of the runways. And we apply the actual flight tracks that the FAA takes and apply that to make sure they're flying over the right routes and so forth, so they're aligned over where they fly over the grounds, we're not just doing a best guess and so forth. And it really is a good, like, scientific model that at one point was, I believe, the FAA actually was largely responsible for. And, you know, now there's software out there that we all kind of use and develop these contours. Go ahead, and we just actually updated the airport noise zone. It seems like we just, 2020, not anymore just, but that is the most current. And that is the contours. And our property is the gray area. The contours are red. And the blue is region 1 and its relevance to the noise zone. But, you know, certainly, again, it's important to note that far and wide, beyond the region, beyond contours, that people hear about noise, they see the overflights and they get concerned. So we certainly try to do our best to address all those issues that the community has. But what we're allowed to do is, as far as funding is concerned, and to help communities and to do our best with respect to compatibility, is largely confined to the contours that you see there within the red. The outermost is the 65, which is quieter. As you approach the airport, it gets a lot noisier, of course. It's 70 in the middle, and then 75 is mostly confined to the airport campus. You can see that it's hard to read what it says on the right-hand table there, but what's compatible as far as the areas relative to the contours. In general, you can have some residences in the 65. It's ideal if they're soundproofed, if it's new construction. And we've actually have a program where we've insulated some homes in the area, in the community recently to the south inside the noise zone in the Glen Burnie area. That, you know, we've used federal funding for that to actually have some existing homes soundproofed with windows and so forth. So that's a good program we have, and so you can coexist in that particular area. Outside of that 70, it gets a little bit more intense as far as the expectation with respect to the land uses that you should have in that particular area. And the zoning usually we find from the county's perspective kind of aligns with all these codes with respect to land use anyway, as far as what types of use there are proposed. The businesses, commercial development, and so forth. Up to 75, there's not really that much that's really desired, but outdoor activities, you know, we have, of course, our Tom Dixon observation area. That's the type of use that's most ideal for the 75, where you want to see the planes, you want to coexist with the planes. It's okay. That's a good, you know, good environment for that type of activity, not a whole lot more. There are folks that live inside of some of these, even up to the 70. If you look on the bottom right-hand side, the table shows you there the estimated population by contour, the estimated residential units, and the overall area of the contour itself. But do realize that they account for census blocks. So as these contours touch, they don't just stop. They round up to account for the blocks that touch them for the census. So it does take in more population, more housing, and so forth than it actually really exists there. Go ahead, please. And so I did mention this a little bit earlier, and this is what we call the Community Enhancement Grant Program, which this does afford the opportunity for communities that have a community association to take, put in an application for grants for the specific projects that are transportation related, that are sidewalks, community signage, you know, road bumps to calm traffic, bus shelters. I did see, interesting enough, that was on there. So, you know, if you live in a community association, you know, and you want to work with us to apply for a grant, you're welcome to do that. I can tell you that we will authorize up to spend $200,000 to $300,000 a year, depending on the number of operations we have. And as operations go up, that number goes up. So eligible projects, you know, up to that throughout the year can be spent. And, you know, we actually have a lot of folks that don't apply for those grants. That it'd be nice to see people take advantage of that. We certainly encourage that as much as possible. Now, the good news is this is based on 1999 airport noise zone. The reason is because it was much larger back then. So we decided that we were codified at the time where it was largely shrinking because aircraft were changing. They were getting better about noise. They changed the engines back in the 90s and so forth to be quieter. And they've only gotten quieter. So as a result of that, it was a much larger footprint at that time. And it also expands out. I believe it's 2 miles from that. So it's a bigger buffer. It's not just the noise zone, it's even further out. So your community might fall in this particular area. Go ahead. Yeah.
So it was based in 1998 on the airport noise.
Correct.
Plus 2 miles.
Much heavier traffic, because we had a lot of commuter traffic back then. We had higher operations, and then the aircraft that did exist that were commercial were much louder.
Gotcha, and the current bubble, are they ever gonna change it? There's been like whispers of trying to get it extended to other communities, right? So like, right
That's
now,
giving you an answer for that?
Yeah.
It's always gonna fall in with the airport noise.
gotcha.
So like the graphic before this doesn't change that, this won't change. If that grows more than this, then it could change, it could
Those-
get bigger or,
And those red lines are basically the airport noise.
that's correct.
Right,
Yeah.
but that bubble extends well into
Two
Howard
miles
County.
beyond, 2 miles beyond.
Okay,
So in some senses, that's a good thing, right? Because we hear complaints from those neighbors who are not inside the ANZ,
Right.
airport noise, and that was the exact intent.
gotcha.
To help and be inclusive of those communities not touched by the airport noise, and realizing that it just does extend beyond the airport noise like that.
So the grants are for the people in that noise.
And that actually beyond the noise zone, again, it's in this
Right.
community enhancement grant zone, influence zone here, and it's 2 miles beyond the airport. And I believe you have to be tied to a community association.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead. So yeah, what we do when we plan here, it's what my boss in the back has been sitting here patiently, and I'm sure he's gonna correct everything I say when it's open public comment, is, we plan for future development here, and that's, what we're gonna get into next in our ultimate plan for the airport as it stands today. Always subject to change, just like the county, always reviewing plans, always coming up with new plans. Oftentimes, influenced by changes in what's going on with operators here at the airport. If Southwest decided to go away, that would change our plans. If Southwest decides to double their operations, that would change our plans. So there's a lot of things that influence us, but this is a forecast that actually we don't derive. We derive this largely from the Federal Aviation Administration. They do this, and then we come back and we basically fact check it. And if we have some serious issues with anything that they do, we'll push back, but typically we're within about 5% of what the FAA thinks we're gonna do, for at least the first 5 to 10 years. And then sometimes we differ a little bit beyond that. This is the 20-year outlook, which is a typical planning horizon. It's how far we look before we kind of put our plans together. And if you can see, it's kind of hard to read in the back maybe, but this is our total passenger forecast. Again, as you know, we are mostly a domestic airport, a little bit of international traffic, but the total passengers that we served last fiscal year, which ended in July, was 24.9 million. We served around 27 million, I believe was the year prior to COVID. So we're getting back. The FAA's forecast that we will return to that in the next year, which is 2024, this fiscal year. This fiscal year that ends in July, they're expecting that we'll be close to that at that point in time. Their fiscal year actually ends in October, so we'll give a couple more months. So that's the expectation for this year. When we look out 20 years from now, although it's only a 3.5% growth rate, you're looking at growing from 2023 to 2043 up to 45 million passengers potentially. It's a small growth rate, but that's a lot of passengers, and that's a lot of facility that we don't have to support today at the airport with what's in. I'm constantly, our office is constantly trying to find space for people. And it's to the point where I have to tell people, we're gonna have to build something at some point. We can get 5 years by, but at some point, we've got to build some building to accommodate some of this demand. And of course, we don't control the demand. If they don't want to come here, then we won't do much. But if they want to continue to come until we're told we're not to try to plan for that activity, then we're going to continue to at least plan and put it on paper. And if it ever comes to fruition, it does. And we'll see what happens from there. But go ahead and advance. So this is the plan as of current, and this is on file with the the Federal Aviation Administration. This is called our airport layout plan. And we're required to keep these up to date every 2 or 3 years or so, because at large airports like ours, conditions do change enough where it's warranted. And this also feeds into the FAA, where they have the opportunity to provide some funding through grant opportunities to help us with some funds. They certainly don't fund everything, but they can fund a good portion of some projects. Now, if it's not on this plan, it's not approved by them, they don't accept it, they won't give any funding for it. And between that funding and this plan, you also have to do what's called NEPA, which is National Environmental Protection Act, that you go through an extensive process to demonstrate that there's no harm to resources, environmental resources, the community, and so forth with any of the projects that we're proposing. So that's always taken care of between the time that we develop this plan and we get the funding for any construction project. And at any time you want to build something, it could take several years from the time that anyone thinks of something to build to the time that you can actually build. We're very fortunate, as I said, with that Amazon project. That's almost unheard of, where that's an opportunity that we have to be able to take advantage of, to deliver that fast. So just real quick, I can go around. This is a little difficult to see from the back, I know, but the purple is the phases which are ongoing or current under construction. Some of it's actually already done because this is getting a little stale. And the orange are projects that are proposed within the next 1 to 5 years. Some of them may never get built, but these are projects that we did advance because at the time when we started the process with the FAA, we thought there was a good reason to advance them. So, and again, it's all going to be dependent on funding. And then the blue are those projects which are potentially in the next 5 to 10 years. And then phase 3 is ultimate. No real time devoted to it, but it's after the 10-year time frame. So I'll just go ahead and try to go around from the left, starting with what's in black there, that box that says I-195 reconfiguration. So for a few years, we've talked about different configurations for that particular interchange that comes into the airport, kind of straightening things out, getting the traffic a little bit better. So there's more opportunity to have sight lines improved and also have better time making as you make your decisions as to where you're going in and around the airports. And some of it actually is influenced by the FAA's standards to try to get roadways out of those, what I referred to earlier as a runway protection zone, where we're supposed to have uses that don't have people within them close into the airport approaches and departures. So roadways where traffic is, you really don't want that off the end of a runway. So FAA is expecting us to kind of keep those, the future interchange improvement outside of that particular interchange and that center line of the runway. Right now, if you approach Northrop Grumman, there's a stoplight right on the center line, extended center line of that runway. So it's really shouldn't be there. So we're trying to do our best to keep that out of there too. You can see on the right-hand side in the green at the top, it's pointing to air cargo relocation and expansion potentially. And then just down below that is GA expansion. That is our corporate operators. When Taylor Swift flew in for the Super Bowl, she flew in just south of there. There's a couple of corporate facilities where her jet parked and stayed probably for the hours that she was here. But that particular orange space says that we would expand that potentially in the future. Definitely below that, there's a terminal and apron parking expansion at the international area. We've already done 2 gates more. We can do 2 more. And then there's right below that, there's a whole bunch of purple improvements that are kind of desperately needed, that are terminal improvements, more bump outs, a few more gates, and then a connector that I'll talk about in more detail in just a moment. We studied an idea that would really be beneficial to the airport, but it's very costly, unfortunately, so we can't advance it right now. But a regional fire training facility, the fire training facility we have today is not necessarily up to standards. It needs to be built up more. It needs to be beefed up for our operators here. We have the practice events at the airport to ensure if there's ever an accident that we have the facilities to support that. We have people that are here 24 hours a day if that ever happens, and they plan for the worst case scenario and hope to never experience it. But they do have to have live fire training events every year. So it's nice to have those facilities here. And the good news is there's a lot of other airports in the region that don't have them that could benefit from the existence of that. So that's something that we'd like to build in the future. And it also would be a place that the rest of us, staff, we have 500 people work at the airport, could have training events and so forth for our staff. And that would be kind of a multi-use site for those services. And then the green down at the bottom, the other runway that's been on the plan for a long time, it's parallel runway 1028 if ever needed for additional capacity. That's what's on our plan there. And then south of that, there is a possibility that we could extend the runway towards the Tom Dixon Park to recover what we lost when we did a runway safety area program. We lost about 1,000 feet on that runway. So what length of a runway means is you lose service, because if you have less runway, you can't get airborne, because aircraft in the summertime, they take on more, passenger load because it's our peak period. They have more fuel, they have more baggage, they're heavier, and the air is hotter, and it's harder to get lifted off the ground. It's easier to do it in the winter times, but in the summer it's harder, so you need more runway length to get airborne. So the less runway length you have, what you have to do is you have to unload bags, you have to unload people, it's a penalty, so the airlines have to say, we can only take 80% of our people or 80% of our baggage. And so if you have the full length of runway you need, you can take 100% of the people. And that's obviously something that the service used to have for that runway. We'd like to get back potentially down the line. Airport maintenance facility, the orange, blue and green, pardon?
Would it take away the park?
I would think, well, it would take away as exists, but I would think that we would be under serious pressure to restore it somewhere in some other shape, place in the same general vicinity.
Because the trail goes right by there too.
It does, right. Yeah, those are all things we would have to take account. And trail
Across
is,
the road?
what's that?
Does it go across the road?
That's correct, it does. Yeah. It does. And it would have a tunnel underneath. If it ever got built, it would have a tunnel underneath it. It's a very expensive endeavor, though.
Yeah.
It may not be the top of priority, but it's on the plan.
Sean.
Yes.
Please never take away that part.
Yeah, well, it would be replaced, I'm certain, with something that would be just as good or better.
Get some protest.
We understand that. And I know we need parking, we need more parking, and I'm surprised it hasn't come up that someone's asked for more parking for that facility. We know it's in desperate need of more parking. It's a widely used, widely appreciated facility. We recognize that, and we understand the value it brings. Airport maintenance facility, we were at some point, again, I'm very hopeful that we could consolidate all of our maintenance complex. We have a large force of maintenance, ground equipment, a large staff that maintains the airfield. They have to, trim the grass around the runways. They have to clear the snow when we have it, off of the runways, the taxiways, the apron, and we do our best to keep open 100% of the time, even in snowy conditions. Only when we're getting nor'easters are we really ever closed. We try to always at least have one runway open and the ability to get in and out of this airport as necessary for essential service. Midfield cargo, going around again, now getting around to the left-hand side. That already was built. There's still a little more opportunity to build in that area for more cargo. And then environmental mitigation properties. You can see the black hatches over there off the end of our runways. And even further up towards the Amtrak station, the MARC station. We've got a lot of property, as I mentioned, out there, but we've already preserved it in much of it in conservation easement, so it never gets developed. It's going to be there for us, for you, as far as, a nice resource to look at. And we use it frankly, because a lot of times anything we do at the airport, as far as trees that get taken down for developments, we've got to account for those trees elsewhere, and they've got to be in the same watershed and so forth. So for us to have those nearby on properties we already own, and again, it benefits the community as well as us at the same time for that mitigation and preservation into the future. And the airline maintenance facility, I'll talk about that next, so we won't dwell on that. And I'll also talk about the parking garage expansion next too, so we can go on. I know we've already gone over 8 o'clock. I apologize. If we have to stop, we can right now.
Yeah. I would just say, just highlight the main points.
Yeah.
And go from there.
All right, so really, the plan is what I needed to talk about. And the rest of it is really just specific projects that are on the plan that I can highlight and focus on. Some of them are already out there in the community. People are well aware of them. So I don't really want to take up any time on the specifics of the plan. That's the exciting stuff, right? But many of you know Southwest is building a hangar here. You know that they're making improvements to the terminal building and so forth. AB, and the last slide is really the only other project that I haven't talked about very much. So that one there is, there's an opportunity to rebuild the garage. And for this group, this would probably provide some of the greater, transportation benefits to us in the future. If we tore down the existing garage right next to the hotel, you would have multi-transit opportunities to bring people off of our curbside, put them into this area, the shuttle buses, the buses, potentially return some of the rental cars. And I know the people mover, we proposed to have a people mover connect from the outer garages closer in. This would connect that potentially in the future. Maglev, it's not our idea, but they want to stop here. If they were to stop here, this is where they would go. So we'd have a direct, terminal connection to the airport. And this would be the core area. They've already identified this area as where they want to be. So that's where they would stop at BWI, kind of next to Terminal AB for Southwest and International as well. Kind of runs directly underneath both of those. So those are the components, you know, I wanted to speak to directly beyond that plan, and I apologize for taking up so much time, but it did get late on us.
Oh, good, we went with a lot of different things, so we
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere that, I know we have, but where the public can view this, this information?
The AOP or this slide deck.
Or just that information in general for what the possibilities of the plans and that's something that's released at this point?
I can get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, I mean, I can just, on our public website, marylandaviation.com, in the environmental planning area, there is the latest NEPA document, environmental assessment that was approved in 2020. So like that airport layout plan and all of those environmental impact categories are evaluated, that's a public document, that's probably the best place to find it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want further to distill where to find that in there, I can help you get there.
Thank you.
That would be just a massive document.
Any other questions?
Where's the hotel hall?
That was on a slide that skipped right over. And you can go back to it if you want to. There you go. So there's the hotel. It's between the C and D concourses. It's on top of the terminal building. It's next to a future air traffic control tower as well. We desperately need the functions that support the airport first, which is new baggage, new ticketing, enhanced, all that, a new screening, checkpoint and so forth. But with it, it brings the opportunity for enhanced revenue with a developer, funded project, hotel, and potentially some office buildings for us, the administration, to get back into at the airport. So we're all under one roof, which we're not. We're at 5, 6 different locations today. And this is potentially a 250 room hotel if there's interest by the community development. That's the new tower. So that's kind of a nice schematic look of it all. Very expensive project.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'm happy to just roll into a recap again, just highlighting some of the things that we had heard here, that we can then go ahead and translate into some planneries or some strategies then that we can share with the public, get their feedback on, and ultimately then fold that into the plan. And again, feel free to jump into if I'm missing anything or misquoting anything. But talking with the transit plan, first of all, I'll get some more information out to you all about that meeting and where you can find some of those relevant documents and how to provide feedback. But just sort of in general about transit, it's not consistent, wish it was easier to use, and being bound by time is an issue. And it is actually a little intimidating to use. And then looking at the Hanover area, and Sean touched on it, here's the Hanover Road extension, needing better connections then throughout the Hanover area. Need to address truck traffic exiting 295 where it's then not permitted, I think there on the BW Parkway, and how to address some of those concerns about truck traffic then going through some of those neighborhoods. TOD just didn't seem like a viable concept at the BWI MARC station. And maybe lean into commercial there on close to the Northrop Grumman site there on the Ring Road. So then looking at anything else for Hanover area that I missed? Okay. Then moving down to Ferndale, Linthicum Ferndale, the need for better sidewalks in some of the local neighborhoods, better pedestrian crossing across B&A in the Cromwell area. Looking at the really kind of the schools and congestion that happens when schools are letting out, and sort of the traffic flow of where parents maybe or guardians are dropping off students as well as then picking up, and sort of getting a better handle on that and how it impacts the local community, and then how they're then having to distribute them throughout the local roads. Again, right, B&A seems like a big hotspot, and we talked about the bottlenecks, how there's the differences in lane configurations, and how to maybe address that in the future. Um, let's see. Sean, you touched on the community enhancement grant. I think that's something important to include here, that may be an opportunity for local HOAs to, I mean, funding is always the biggest issue, so.
Yeah.
So, and we always have issues within these communities, so if you can sort of marry those two and address those through some local grants, that could be an important, avenue. Nicole, you had touched on aviation between Dorsey and Andover. And Brian then followed up and said, maybe there's this opportunity where we can look at whether lighting is appropriate or how to better address commuters and recreation, people using this trail for recreation, making sure that it's safe for everybody.
It looked like on your map that you were gonna have some development around that area. Was that accurate?
I'm sorry, where is
It was
this?
hard to tell, like near the BWI trail in the north area over by Arundel. Was there development?
There's a
planned?
yeah, there is a possibility, the cargo expansion. is
Yeah,
possible.
that's what I thought, okay.
Again, anything that touches the trail and those resources would certainly be addressed, any development that we would propose.
Okay.
Then we discussed the Linthicum TOD and sort of it was something that might be feasible, but maybe just sort of refurbish the storefronts, very low intensity type of redevelopment. And because there may be some pushback from the local community, but there is still a potential to sort of refurbish that area, fill in some of the commercial. But looking at 2 to 3 stories might be a concern of the local community. And the transportation issues as a result of that. Illegal parking is an issue there in that area. And really how to enforce motorists who are speeding throughout that area. See how we can address that. Moving over to the Brooklyn Park area, we can follow up to see what type of improvements are being made outside of Cedar Hill in regards to bike and pedestrian facilities. If we can implement some of the recommendations from the Route 2 Glen Burnie feasibility study, and how to better address when students are let out from the schools and how to create safe routes for them, right? So there is currently the study, and we can echo a lot of those recommendations within this region plan as well. So that it again, when our decision makers are identifying, say, reviewing the capital budget, and they see some of these recommendations in a walk and roll plan, a transit plan, or a transportation plan, a region plan, and it's sort of echoed throughout these other plans, these plans that have been vetted by the community, it sort of adds a lot more weight and pressure to them to sort of then follow through and make these connections or fund these projects. The Chesapeake Art Center, as popular as it is, maybe we need to address how sort of some of the concerns and the issues like parking and traffic as a result of that popularity. And then looking at our public transit facilities, again, just to continue to fund our bus shelters and enhance those, and look at trash management partnerships with local HOAs, adopt the highways, any other type of strategies to ensure that those trash receptacles are there and that the expectation is that they would actually get emptied. What do you think?
To clarify something, you can't see your name.
Oh,
You were concerned about the parking that was stemming from Chesapeake Art Center or the
It's
school?
the
It's
whole
the school,
strip
right?
there, but in,
The new facility, new sports facilities.
I'm sorry.
Chesapeake Art Center has a huge parking lot. So
Yeah,
that-
Correct, but it is more so, it would be the
Sports.
school, the middle school, correct. There's a lot of things that go on. Sometimes it does flow out because people park in the front,
Yeah.
there's activities in the back. It depends on what's going on, but I would say the majority is coming from the middle school.
Okay,
And then the concern is that it would also come from, it is going to come from the new fields,
okay,
you know,
great.
because that's weekend use.
Do you feel like people know about all the parking in the rear?
For sure, because when you turn
Okay, so
around.
so it does get
You
filled.
have to, you can't miss it.
Also, I think they've either applied or they're going to receive a grant for wayfinding
Oh, perfect.
signage at Chesapeake
Yeah.
Arts Center, because a lot of people park at the theater
Yeah,
while all of the, program is on the backside, like where we all met. And so that's at least just strictly for CAC, that
Okay.
wayfinding. I don't know how it applies to the senior center on the other end,
mhm.
or for the school, but that's strictly for.
Right, because at times, I mean, it'll be, there's classes, then you have the, what's the county facility right in the middle
That's
there.
Department of Health.
Right, and no, in the middle of the art center in the back.
Oh, rec parks.
There you go, and then there can be a performance also up front, because they rent it out to other entities.
So they make money.
And things, which is, yeah, that's not a bad thing, it's just, all those three things can be going on one weekend. I don't think the majority is coming from the art center, like you said, though. I do believe that it's the parking there's no parking for the middle school other than where the buses pull. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And then everyone else is going in the senior center, or they're parking at the Walgreens, or using the loop of the Chesapeake Art Center to pick up kids, and then they're backing into the Arundel Gardens neighborhood.
Thanks for clarifying. Okay, did I miss anything in that quick recap? Okay. Great, so I think then we can move on to public comments, Karen?
Yeah, so we do have a little bit of time, a couple minutes for public comment, so if anyone would like to make a public comment, I can take it, you have it 2 minutes,
Sure.
I'm gonna take him first real quick. Just state your name and then.
Okay, my name is Brad Stevens. I'm a longtime resident of Region One. I've got a lot of comments and thoughts, but I'll make it, quick. Is that the light rail TOD, I strongly oppose. Look at what that whole community around that light rail station looked like before light rail. Look at it now.
And which light rail?
I won't go in that Royal Farm. I won't go in the Exxon. I won't go in the Shipley Shopping Center. I've been panhandled. I've been loitering. They hang out. They sneak out once you start pumping gas, and they approach you when you've got the hose into the gas tank, okay? So I strongly oppose, any TOD around that light rail. And you can also apply that to Cromwell. If you look at Cromwell Shopping Center, when it turned from a ball field into a shopping center, used to have a giant, all that's cleared out. And you talk about people crossing from that Cromwell station over to the Cromwell Shopping Center, they don't care. Look at where light rail goes from Cromwell up through the city to Timonium. And it goes to spur off the airport. That's it. Look at the people who live in the city. When they get off light rail, do they look for traffic? Come to Cromwell, why would they look at traffic on B&A Boulevard?
Thank you. If you just.
All right, back to Cromwell, with all the extra.
And just state your name, please.
Oh, Laura Donovan. I live in the area. With Cromwell, the shopping center, there's all the extra buses coming in to pick up the passengers. And nobody ever mentioned that when you were talking about the traffic. So we've got that problem. And you've also got Arthur Slade over there in our school. With the airport, I've been in this room since 2015, monthly, because of airport noise and the roundtable meeting. And as Sean mentioned, they can have their plans, but FAA's got to do all kinds of stuff with them. So anything that you do to us that involves the airport, consider it done. We're done, because it takes forever to change things. One of my concerns with the airport and the rebuilding is traffic coming in, particularly trucks doing deliveries. I've seen UPS trucks come through Linthicum during a Christmas celebration. Didn't appreciate that, little kids in the streets that night. Some signage on the major roadways coming in would help. What else? There's so much, my God, you open a can of worms when you do this. I will get in touch with you all. But, and everything they said about Lincoln and Ferndale light rail, extend the light rail, the way I understand it, everybody down the South, what like hell, they didn't want it. And now we've got all the problems, we're the ones getting dumped on, we get the pollution, we get the noise. There was a guy at Cromwell one day, one of the business owners told me, he was relieving himself on the corner, and I don't mean urinating. So it gets bad down there. That whole place ought to be cleaned out. I noticed when you were talking about Brooklyn Park, something about, access to food. We had a giant shopping center or giant store in that shopping center, and they left because of, quote, the riffraff. The bait store, a woman tried to burn it down. This was on the news. They had video of it. And she tried to burn it down because the guy who was nice enough to let them come in and take shower in the sink, you know, wash up. Well, he said he can't have this anymore because they were passing out on his floor with needles in their arms. And when he said, no more of this, she tried to burn it down. So it's a mess down there. It needs to be cleaned up. You want to add stuff everywhere.
Thank
You
you.
need to clean house first.
Thank you, ma'am. If you have further comment, you definitely can
I will.
email. You can email. Thank you. This is constrained up to 2 minute time frame. Is there
All
anything
right,
else?
thank you.
I have a public comment. All right, like I said, you can, if you have any further comments, please, send them to region1@aacounty.org. And thank you.
Okay, we can move on to next steps then. Let me close. These. Okay, so we currently have a questionnaire that's open to the public on our website there, aacounty.org /region1. That opened February 6th, the day that we had our drop-in session. At the Brooklyn Park Library. We were there, I think right from 1 to 7:30 or so. I think we had a couple dozen folks that came by, interested, left some feedback for us. Just wanted to talk about the process in general too. And again, when we have these drop-in sessions, don't feel like you have to, if you don't have anything to say on the economy or housing, don't be shy. We're still happy to talk to you about this process and any other concerns that you may have. So again, feel free to stop by when we advertise these drop-in sessions at some of these local libraries or other facilities in Region 1. But again, going back to the questionnaire, again, that's up on the website. It closes March 5th. So again, please remember to tell your friends, colleagues, family, other folks that's available, and we'd like some input on some of the draft strategies that we've created for the economy chapter, as well as just getting some feedback on some of the housing styles and types that we've talked about at the previous meeting. Our next stakeholder advisory committee meeting will be on March 12th. It'll be a joint meeting with Region 3. This was done because we're bringing in a couple speakers that will talk about market rate housing. If you remember, at our previous meeting, we talked about affordable housing, but we felt it was important to bring in a couple experts to talk about what some of the challenges are in bringing and delivering different types of housing, right? Because at our last meeting, we talked about those missing middle types, cottage courtyards, other type of, or different densities between your single family home and your townhome and even multifamily home. Since that's what we typically see here in the county. And they can, one of the speakers can talk about what the challenges are bringing that product. We also have a commercial developer who can then talk about, again, what some of the challenges are. We've heard about how some of the grocery stores have left, right? And again, why we're not necessarily seeing some of the Trader Joe's or other high quality commercial within the area. So those speakers will be available. And again, due to some scheduling constraints, it made sense then to just link up with Region 3 since there is that overlap. And Region 3 is just to the south of Region 1. So, you know, while we have developed these regional boundaries, there is obviously a lot of, these boundaries are very fluid, right? You're typically living, working, playing in some of these other areas. So for that meeting, we'll start at 5:30. Those two speakers will go on for about 45 minutes to an hour or so. We'll also have the joint meeting to talk about planning and zoning terms, since that can be a shared meeting. And then for that last hour, we'll carve off and we'll close the doors. Since it's at the same facility where we had our kickoff meeting, we'll close the doors and talk about visioning. You'll see a visioning survey sent to you all shortly. We'll give you 3 options. They are just developed by your chair, vice chair, and office planning and zoning. They are just starter statements, right? We don't expect them to be perfect. See which one you like, rank them, tell us what you like or dislike about each one. And then when we meet on March 12th in that 3rd hour, we'll bring it up in a Google Doc up on the screen, and we'll sort of live edit it based on a lot of the feedback that you all provided then throughout that survey. So that's March 12th. Then looking ahead, our next meeting is on, our meeting after March 12th is on, I think, April 17th. That's when we actually then start discussing any areas where we think zoning may change, planned land use, development policy areas. We'll talk about those terms and what they mean at that March 12th meeting, but that's when we're actually making some of these decisions about where some of the changes may be made on the zoning map. Then, so we've allocated 2 meetings, April 17th, and then another date in May. What we're thinking is, just to ensure that we have enough time to go through these maps, is if we were to set up another meeting in between March 12th and I can pull up what that other date is.
17th.
So again, this is that Region 1 hub that I keep referring to, AA. This is the longer email address, but if you do type in county.org Region 1, you'll get here as well. And so we have this stay involved tab that then, right, so here are our upcoming dates, April 17th and May 15th. So office planning and zoning, we're just proposing to, if we were to add another meeting date between April 17th and May 15th, just to give ourselves enough time to go over these zoning maps. And from our previous experience working on Region 2, having a Saturday morning meeting to go over that. In our experience, people tend to come to these meetings fresher. We'll offer bagels, coffee, orange juice, whatever type of sustenance and energy, sugar you may need to get yourself going in the morning. We're happy to supply that. But just wanted to put that out there to see if folks are interested in that. Again, what I'm looking for here is just no way, that's a terrible idea and we won't go any further with it. But if you're like, maybe it depends on the day, I'll put out a poll for those 4 Saturdays that are in between those 2 dates and see what works. Again, is we need to have a quorum. So if we don't have that, again, we won't be doing that. But
And that would do away with May.
if we were to complete our work on that, if we were to schedule a 3rd meeting, that would be in between April and May, and we were able to complete our work, we could, again, cancel that May 15th meeting. So general thoughts on just floating the idea of a Saturday morning between April 17th and May 15th to go over zoning.
Depends on the bagels.
So, okay, so I gotta tell you a story. From Region 2, we had a special request for an Asiago bagel with strawberry cream cheese. So I'm happy to take special requests, but don't push your luck with that comment, okay? Please.
And some lots too, and I'm.
So I know Jim and Mara Lee participated in the Region 2 process. I don't know if you want to add anything else about whether it was productive or favorable or, but yeah. Okay, so I saw some thumbs up, nodding.
Not opposed.
Not opposed, right? Okay, and the idea would be we go from 9 till about 12:30. We see how we're doing, right? But again, as office planning and zoning, we provide some breakfast in the form of bagels and coffee and beverages. Okay, I'll be in touch then with some dates. Okay, so, I think that's all I have then for next steps.
Then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to leaving? See y'all in the next meeting.